How's it going, everyone? Today we're going to be going through everything you need to know on how to learn and master Cho'gath. Now, out of all the champion guides I've made so far, this one was definitely one of the most fun due to the new runes, itemizations, and playstyles that I'm going to be teaching you throughout this guide. It definitely makes the carry potential on this champion much higher, and the overall enjoyment, so if you're interested to hone your skills on the Chogs or you just want to add them to your champ pool, then let's get started. Now, we're going to be starting off this guide with the runes, but because there are so many strong options in terms of runes and itemization on this champion, I reached out to Saku, who is currently the best and most muscular Cho'gath player in the world at the moment, and he is kind enough to help me truly understand the finer details of what makes somebody a Cho'gath master, and more importantly, when to run each setup and when it's best going to be used to give you the highest chance of winning your games. So starting with the Halo Blades page. Now this is going to be your new standard. Throw that tank Cho'gath grasp page out the window. You still use it in some games, but Halo Blades is going to be your new default. It's extremely powerful. There are so many matchups where you wouldn't normally be able to get prio in, but now you can. It makes your level 1 very powerful, which of course helps you get prio, level 2 advantage, maintain pressure, and really gets you out of the hardest part of Cho'gath laning, which is typically that early game. Now on the page you can be running Cheap Shot, has a lot of synergy with his E and Q, and Grizzly Mementos. You'll never swap out any of these two. You keep them as they are. The other options aren't really going to be worth it on this champion. But for the final option, you can go either Relentless Hunter or Ultimate Hunter, and this will truly depend on how your games are going to be going. So if you're ever unsure, just default to Relentless Hunter, as movement speed is such a key part about this build. But Ultimate Hunter, if you feel like in your games, they're really volatile, action-packed, and your ulti's not up as much as you'd want it to be, you're killing your lane often, eating grub, stuff like that, a lot of skirmishing, you can swap to Ultimate Hunter if you feel like you need it, but your default should be Relentless Hunter. But if you're ever unsure when to take each one, I'd say to go Relentless in matchups that aren't very volatile. So if you're versus a Scion or a Gragas, something chill like that, you can run Relentless Hunter. But if you're up against Jax, and especially with volatile jungle, so if you're Cho'gath Rek'Sai versus Jax Lee Sin, there's probably going to be a lot of skirmishing topside, a lot of grub contesting, so Ulti Hunter might be a little bit better for you in that situation, but it is truly going to depend on how your games normally go. Now for the secondary page, it is going to be Sorcery every game, with Axiom Arcanist and Celerity. Now, you'll never swap out these runes. The only exception is if you get autofilled to mid or AD carry, which is actually really powerful positions for Cho'gath, might even be a little bit better than top at times, especially AD carry Cho'gath is underrated at the moment, but you can swap out Axiom Arcanus for Nimbus Cloak. If you're taking Ghost or Heal, any type of secondary rune that's summon a spell that's not TP, you can swap it out, but for top lane, I'll just run Axiom Arcanus every single game, and Celerity to synergize with the move speed build. Now, for the rune shards, you're going to be going Adaptive Force, Movement Speed, and HP every game. Go flat HP in volatile matchups. It's going to be trade heavy early. So matchups like a Riven, something like that, or a Jax, where they are going to force trades onto you. But if you're up against something chill, like a Malphite or just a ranged champion where you're not going to be playing too volatile early, maybe like a Kennen, you can just run scaling HP. Moving on to our second rune page, we have Arcane Comet. Now, there are two main timings where I'd want you to take this rune page over Halo Blades. The first one is, of course, going to be up against ranged top laners. So champions like Kennen, Aurora, Teemo, Arcane Comet gives you so much value, and it can be quite tricky to proc Halo Blades or Grasp against them if they have good spacing. Now, Comet's really effective against them because not only will it guarantee hit off your Q, but you can just E the wave in front of them, and if you're able to hit them with one spike, they're going to be slowed from your E. Guaranteed Comet's going to hit in most cases, unless they use an ability to dodge it, so you do get a lot of value from this rune. Now, the second option is going to be based on your personal confidence as a Cho'gath player in certain melee matchups. So the best example of this is up against a Jax, where when I first played this matchup, in my mind, I can't proc Halo Blades against him, he's just going to block my auto attacks with E. So I went Comet, and it felt okay, but when I ran Halo Blades against him, when I felt more confident, it definitely felt like the stronger alternative, because he would trade onto me with a 17 cooldown second E, I would bait it out with my Q, disengage, and now I've got this massive timer where I can force a trade onto him with my Halo Blades E, and completely annihilate the trade. So Halo Blade's going to give you more aggressive options, but if you're unconfident in matchups like Jax, matchups like Darius is another good example, Comet can be a good training wheel to use for those kind of volatile matchups that are more skillful. Now, the runes you're going to be taking on the Arcane Comet page is going to be Axiom Arcanus no matter what, that's not going to swap out. Celerity as well, you're going to lock that in, and then either Scorch or Water Walking. You technically could take Gathering Storm if you're going the more AP heavy build and you like that playstyle, but in my opinion, if you're taking Comet up against a champion like Teemo, doesn't really have any sustain, so Scorch is going to give you the most value, and Water Walking is a good option if you want to be roam heavy style quite a lot, but normally with Comet, the AP build feels a little bit better than the roam movement speed build, so I would just say stick to Scorch and the majority of your matchups when you run this rune if you're ever unsure. Now for the secondary runes, you do have two options. First is going to be Inspiration with Approach Velocity. Feels extremely good, not just for hitting a Q, and moving towards them, but also for spacing melee champions. So a good thing about approach velocity that not a lot of people play around is you get movement speed going towards them, of course, but when you turn around, you still have that movement speed for a little bit. So you can space even melee champions by hitting them with your E and spacing backwards and sticking onto them, using that approach velocity movement speed very well. You can make it really tricky for a melee champion to engage onto you. Even a ranged champion as well, you can stick onto them and make it really easy to get a big trade onto them instead of just a Q and they disengage after. Now the second option will be magical footwear or cookies, personal preference here. I'd recommend cookies in the more volatile matchups. If you are taking it in a melee one like a Darius or a Jax, cookie can be quite good, but up against a ranged champion, I'd just say go free boots and get that extra scaling. You can also go the domination page secondary with cheap shot and ultimate relentless hunter. That is a good option as well. It's a little bit based on personal preference, where the domination page will scale better, but inspiration will be better for lane. And if you're up against a champion like Aurora or Teemo, I would just recommend maxing out and laning and going inspiration. And the runes on this page are going to be double adaptive force and either scaling or flat HP, depending on how volatile the matchup's going to be in the early game. And for our final rune, we have Grasp of the Undying. Now keep in mind, if you take this page, you are locked into going full tank or Rod of Ages tank no matter what, so don't try to build AP with this. And after we cover the items, I am going to be going through when to go each of the 3 runes or playstyles depending on the game that you're in a bit more detail, but the main variable is matchup. So if you're up against other tanks such as a Malphite or a Maokai, Gragas, tank feels significantly better for you in those types of lanes, especially if your team needs frontline as well. But as for the runes in this tree, you are going to be taking Demolish no matter what, really good rune on Cho, of course so much HP. And as for your secondary rune, unfortunately for you, you can take each of the 3 options, so you will have to think about it. If you're ever unsure, just go second wind, better safe than sorry. But if you feel really confident in your matchup, you can take conditioning, get that extra scaling. So if you're up against a Malphite, Gragas are great examples, and you feel like you can win the matchup without needing the extra regen from second wind, then just take conditioning. Cho'gath has enough sustain already. But bone plating, I'd say, is really good into certain volatile matchups. So if you're building tank, Riven is a great example. Bone plating allows you to play the 1-3 a lot more aggressive than you would be able to if you didn't take that rune. And for the final rune, you're just going to be taking Overgrowth, as HP is really important on this champ. Now for our second rune page, you're going to be going Inspiration, I'd say every game, because approach velocity feels so good on this champ. You can technically go Domination and Greed a little bit, but I'd advise against it and just go Inspiration because approach velocity is so broken. Now for the final rune, you will be taking either free boots or cookies. I'll take cookies in the volatile matchups, Riven being a great example, but just take free boots in the easy ones like a Malphite. And for the rune shards, attack speed every game, and then double HP. I'd personally recommend flat HP and 1 scaling, but you can go double scaling HP if you feel like the enemy top laner is going to be a free meal for you. Moving on to summoner spells. Now this section will only take around 30 seconds, as if you're playing top lane Cho'gath, you should just take TP and flash every single game no matter what. There's no exception to that rule. If you're playing mid or AD carry Cho'gath, you can of course swap to Ghost, or you can use heal on AD carry, but even then I'll just take TP most of the time, especially if you're not interested in becoming a Cho'gath mid or AD carry main. If you get filled there, TP is still going to be very consistent for you. Moving on to the item builds. Now, out of all top lane champions in the entire game, Cho'gath has some of the most variety in terms of itemization out of all of them, so go get yourself a meal with a lot of protein in it, of course, and lock in, because this will take a little bit, but I will do my best to go through each build as efficiently as possible. Now, starting with the AP movement speed build, this is going to be your new default. This is going to be your go-to build on him, as it truly makes up for his lack of mobility, and feels extremely good on him at the moment. You won't be going it every game, but this should be your default if you're ever uncertain. Now, for your first item, you're going to be going D-Ring most of the time. The exception to that is if you're up against a really hard range matchup like Aurora with a lot of poke, that champion's completely brutal, or if you're up against a heavy poke lane that you're not confident in. So up against a Teemo or a Kennen are great examples. You don't need D-Shield, you can get away with D-Ring, but if you're not that confident in the matchup, you can use D-Shield as training wheels. Now for your first recall, I recommend Swifties every single game if you can afford them, as these boots are so OP at the moment and they truly make up for Cho'Gath's main weakness, and that is lack of mobility, and if you can get them early on in lane, you can space pretty much anyone. Now, the alternative to that, if you can't afford them, grab a Dark Seal. If you have 800, grow Amped Dark Seal. Doesn't matter, try to get this as soon as you can. If you can't afford it first recall because you bought Swifties, or you're too poor, something like that, get it on your second recall. You need to get this item as fast as you can. I highly recommend it. Cho'Gath, I would say, is one of the most, maybe even the best mid-Jai's user out of top lane, and I'm not exaggerating there. It's very easy to maintain your stacks and not down them, because you're building so much movement speed, and you can go Zhonya's, as you can see there down below, if you need it. So definitely I recommend this item really highly, especially if you're confident on the champion. Now, one item I forgot to touch on, because I was way too tunneled on converting you all to the Magi Kingdom, is Symbiotic Souls. These are going to be your only alternative to Swifty Boots, because you don't really want to be building Tabbies or Merc Treads on this variant of Cho. It feels like a waste of money, as Swifties are so broken, and Symbies are the next best thing. Now, keep in mind, if you build these, you are going to feel a distinct lack of combat power in your matchup compared to Swifty Boots. If you're building this, you're locked into the mindset of just scaling, playing for great farm and high tempo recalls, and even looking for opportunities around the map, as your combat power in terms of 1v1 dueling in your lane is going to be a lot lower, but it does feel really nice in the mid game when you can just one-shot a bot wave, boost straight down mid and make picks. Your movement speed is incredibly high, especially with Shurelia's, Relentless Hunter, Deadman's Plate, all the other movement speed you're building, and hopefully your stacked up Magi's. You can definitely make picks very easily on a mobile champions that are sitting mid, even champs like Ezreal that have a gap closer, you can catch up to them very easily, but this item is going to give you a big trade-off in terms of your lane power, so especially if you're in a volatile situation, both junglers are really heavy, fighting, contesting grubs, stuff like that, I would just stick with Swifties, and if you're ever unsure, just go Swifty Boots. But if you're in a non-interactive lane, your junglers only play bot side, or in certain games where you base on 900, not 1000, you can pick up these boots and they are a good alternative. Now you're going to be rushing the Shurelias as your first item. This item is so cheap. The reason you go this instead of an item such as Cosmic Drive, as the active feels a lot better, so more applicable movement speed, where with Cosmic Drive you have to hit your Q or something to get movement speed, and at that point you're already going to be able to reach them, so this item allows you to reach them a lot more easier. The movement speed feels more practical, but the main reason is of course the price. This item is so cheap, you can get it so quickly on into the game. You can have Swifties and Shurelias when your opponent barely has one item, and you're just going to be running laps around them. Now for your second item, it's going to be Deadman's Plate as your default. This is going to be your main 2 core, so going Shurelias into Deadman's. You can go Magi second if you're feeling like you're taking over the game, but typically I'd recommend Magi's as your third item because you need 10 out of 10 stacks and you want Deadman's as fast as you can, especially if they have a lot of AD threats. Now the alternatives to that is if they don't really have a lot of AD damage, you can go Force of Nature. So if you're versing mainly magic damage, so let's say Cannon top, Lilia jungle, Cannon Ivan, something like that, you can just go Force of Nature as Deadman's Plate's not going to feel as good in that situation. Now you can go Proto Bout if you need a bit of extra damage, because this item is also very cheap, and you can utilize the active to dodge major abilities. So imagining you're up against a Sylas or an Ambessa, you can use the Proto Bout active to dodge Sylas chain or Ambessa ulti. That can give you a lot of value, but you can just go Zhonya's in that case if you want to, but the benefit of this item is of course the price. Now, Magi's, like I talked about before, you have to be doing really well, feel really confident like you're not going to die. In that case, you can build it up to Shurelia's, but typically it will be your third. Now, for Zhonya's, this is if you truly need it, if they have a lot of threat. So if you're up against a Vi jungle, something like that, Zhonya's is going to be really impactful as you're not that tanky with this build. You still get a little bit of HP from the Shurelias, so you're not going to be Glass Cannon, anything like that, but Zhonya's is definitely needed if they have a really fed assassin or hard engage lockdown like the Vi or Jarvan. Now for the third item, it's going to be Deadman's if you haven't got it already, or Force of Nature or Koenig Rukin, depending on the situation. So I'd go Force in games where it's going to be very easily stacked up, where if they have a lot of magic damage champions hitting you a lot, consistent DPS, this can be a great pickup, but just go Koenig Rukin if it's mainly burst. So if they have, for example, solo AP Syndra, just go Koenig Rukin over Force of Nature, as you're not really going to be able to stack it that easily. You can also go Jaksho if you don't need MR that badly. So an example for that would be you have Deadman second, and let's say they have one AP threat like a Lux, and she's not having the best game, or she's building like trash, like a Seraphs and some weak damage item. You can just go Jaksho the Protein as your third item and not have to build all the way into a full magic resist item. You can go Zhonya's at this point, same reasoning as before, and Magi's if you feel like you're having a good game, your 10 out of 10 stacks especially, that's a great indicator for you to pick that up. Even in a game where your team is losing, if you're playing well individually, Magi's is a great comeback mechanic tool. And to round off the build, Jaksho the Protein I strongly recommend. If you have Deadman's and an MR item, you should pick up Jaksho as soon as you can. Or you can go Swift March, so upgrading your Swifty boots into Swift March after you've got the third item finished. I wouldn't recommend going Swift March after item number 2, do it after item number 3, because you don't want to be delaying your MR item, especially if they have heavy magic damage threats. You can also go into Riftmaker as your final item if you want a little bit of extra damage. This item actually feels quite good as a final item because you're going to be so tanky at that point, probably 6,000 HP give or take, so it's going to keep you in the fight for a long time, very easily to stack up and maintain this item. And you can pick up Magi's this late. I wouldn't recommend it, it is an option, but you definitely can, especially if you're on 10 stacks and you base with around 13, 1400, feel free to pick that up if you feel like you're not going to die again. And Zhonya's again, same reasoning as before. And I'll put up a full build example down below. As you can see, Shirelia's into Swifties with an armor, while Deadman's into an MR item. This is going to be your standard most of the time if you're doing this page, with Jaksho the protein, and then rounding off with Riftmaker or another tank item or a tanky AP item like Zhonya's if you need it. And for our second build, we have the full AP version of Cho. For your starting item, you're going to be going D-Ring almost every single game, D-Shield only into the really brutal poke matchups, yet again, but for your first buy, you're going to be trying to get Lost Chapter if you can. If you can ever afford this one, you should do it, or if you're close to the item and you have your TP still up, you should try to greed for it, as it's going to be your biggest power spike on first recall. But if you can't afford it, don't give up your natural back timer, don't stay in lane if you're half HP with no mana, something like that. If you have a good back timer, of course, the alternatives are going to be Swifty Boots or Dark Seal Amp Tomes, or even just a Dark Seal if you have to base pretty early. Just because we're not doing the other build doesn't mean we're not a Mid-Jais king, but do keep in mind Mid-Jais is not as good on the AP version, which might be surprising to you, just because the survivability is a lot higher on the movement speed version, as your movement speed is very high, and you're building Deadman's Plate, Kainagruken, a lot of defensive items, so it's a lot easier to stay alive on that build, but you can still build Mid-Jais on AP, the movement speed still feels great, of course the AP is going to feel good, and you can go to items like Zhonya's or Banshees if you need it, so don't shy away from it. Now for our boots, it's going to be either Swifties, cooldown, or Sorks. I would still recommend Swifties if your matchup needs it. So of course a matchup like an Olaf, something like that, you are going to be going Swifties, but cooldown boots are a little bit cheaper. I would say that's the only timer I would recommend cooldown boots, is just because of the cost. So if you naturally base, you pick up your first item, you have 600 gold left over with tier 1 boots, you can just upgrade that into cooldown boots, that's perfectly fine. And Sork boots are going to be pretty similar. You can see 600, 700, 800 gold, they have 3 tiers of boots, so let your natural back timer dictate what you're going. But if you can afford all three, then you decide between Sorks or Swifties. Swifties, if you feel like you need them, they have a lot of slowing, or you just need them for your matchup, especially in side lane, to not get run down. Now for your first item, you're going to be going the Luden's Companion every game for the full AP build. This is going to give you insane wave clear and farming, so being able to play for that high CS 10 CS per minute style on this build feels a lot better, and it's going to give you a really heavy poke in your lane as well, so definitely going to be your go-to first item. But for your second item, you do have a huge variety of options. I would say the most standard one is either going to be Storm Surge or Protobelt. Protobelt because it's cheap, so if you can base and buy in one swoop, it's going to be a great power spike for you, and Storm Surge feels really nice as an alternative, as it's relatively cheap as well, and it also gives you movement speed, which feels really good on this champion. The other options are, of course, Mid-Jais. If you're having a really good game, you're on 10 stacks, feel free, especially if you base with, you've got your Ludens, you've got tier 2 boots, you base on 14, 1500 gold, and you've got 10 stacks of Dark Seal, don't be afraid to go Mid-Jais if you feel confident. Now, if you need defensive items, so Zhonya's into, like we talked about before, like a Yone top, a Relia top with like a Vi jungle, Zhonya's is going to be a really huge buy for you, or Banshees if you're into a really heavy AP comp. I wouldn't go Banshees second very often, but if they have a really heavy AP threat, especially Assassins, like an Evelyn, something like that, it can be a great pickup. Now, Shadow Flame is an option for you. The magic pen does feel quite good, but I'd say it's a lot less easy to use compared to the rest, as you can't really get value from your ulti against champions, as you're going to be leading with ulti first, and then WQing. Or QWing, which is kind of non-intuitive to the champion, because normally you'll hit a Q and then full combo somebody, or lead with E, QW, ulti at the end, so it doesn't really feel like it feels as natural on him compared to the other items, but it is an alternative, and it also works on neutral objectives, so it can be good for securing Baron, and even stealing it against the enemy jungler. Now for our other options, we can see a third item, all very similar, the exact same reasoning for each one, so if you went, let's say, Zhonya's second, you can go Storm Surge as your third item here, or Shadow Flame if you want a bit of extra damage, or you can go Banshees if you need MR. Pretty rare that I'd go Banshees and Zhonya's at the same time. Keep that in mind. You normally pick one or the other depending on the game state. Don't be trying to build tank on this AP version. And then to round off your build, you of course want Rabadon's Death Cap. If you have 3 AP items, that's a good sign you can go Death Cap. You can go at third some games, but I'd avoid it. Just go fourth item, and fifth item is going to be Death Cap and Void Stuff most of the time, as you can see from the full build example down below. And for our final build, we have Tank Cho'gath. Now, yet again, even though you're building tank this time, I want you to prioritize D-Ring almost every single game over Shield. Only go Shield if you truly need it. Now, for your first buy, when I first started playing Tank Cho, I felt like at Heartsteel, you feel really strong. But leading up to that, you feel like probably the weakest champion in top lane, because you're a Cho'Gath with Grasp, with Giant Spouts and Crystalline Braces. You just feel like a free meal to any competent top lane champion. Now, Saku showed me that if you build an early resistance, it more than makes up for it. So if you're up against a champion like a Yone or an Irelia or a Tryndamere is a great one, and you build Warden's Mail first, and then into Heartsteel, you can go Bramble Vest as well in certain matchups with healing like a Warwick. quick, but if you go an early resist before your Heartsteel, it can help you function in that lane a lot better. Now, Negatron Cloak's of course going to be the AP version. So if you verse a Aurora top, especially if they have magic damage jungle, this is going to be a great first pickup for you, building into tank. Now for the boots, Swifties are still amazing on them. You're still in a mobile champion, so Swifty boots really helps. I'd still recommend going that a lot of the time. But now, because you're building so much HP, resistances matter a lot, and tenacity matters more, because you're going to be getting stuck in more. So if you verse heavy auto attack comp, so Graves jungle, or even a Vi jungle with an auto attacking top, Tabbies can feel good, and Merctrids of course if they have a lot of CC. Your alternative to Heartsteel as your first item is going to be Rod of Ages. So this is pure scaling. You're quite weak early game, but stronger than Heartsteel, so it's kind of a middle ground, because your wave clear is going to be a lot better. You can go more points in Q and build into this with Catalyst for extra sustain, and you are locked into scaling, but you are still going full tank after. So this would be good in matchups where you can't really proc Heartsteel very easily. So range matchups or matchups that are just going to cut you out, you can go Rod of Ages instead. And if you just feel like you're struggling, you want to build tank, but you really struggle with Heartsteel in certain matchups, Rod of Ages can be a good way to get out of them. It's pure scaling though, keep in mind, you're going to be very, very weak early game. So if your jungler is heavy playing bottom, something like that, as usual, Rod of Ages can be a great pickup. Now for the rest of the build, because you get so much HP from your first item and from your ulti, you can just go heavy resistances. So a Frozen Heart is good, or a Canic Rukun, the AP version. You can go Abyssal Mask if your teammates are carrying you, if you have strong AP threats, or some games where if you base with enough for it. So if you base on your cloak, you have enough for Abyssal Mask and there's a big fight coming up, but you don't have enough for Canic Rukun, this can be a great pickup as well. Now, something I didn't touch on yet is the Fimbulwinter. So this is a great second or third item. It's really powerful. The problem is because you're so weak early game, building tier feels extremely bad. Where on a champion like Jace, you're very strong early game, so you don't even know, they won't even tell that you bought a tier, because you're going to be strong regardless. On Cho'gath, you definitely feel it, so I wouldn't recommend building tier on your first recall, unless you're in a free matchup. So against a Malphite, Greg is something that's very easy for you. You don't need to build early resistances. You can go tier then, but other than that, I'd say get tier on your second or maybe even your third recall, depending on how much gold you're basing on, and then get Fimbulwinter second if you have enough tier stacks, or third if you don't. Sometimes you will have enough tier stacks and you won't go Fimble if you desperately need armor, especially if it's a very valuable Frozen Heart game. So maybe they have 3 auto attackers, or they have a lot of AP threats. Maybe they have an AP AD carry like a Swain and a strong AP mid. You can go into an MR item before, but a lot of the time if you have your tier stacked up, you have Heartsteel first item, then Fimbulwinter feels really natural as your second. For Unending Despair, this is great into heavy melee comp, so if they have 3 melee champs, 3 or 4 diving onto you, this will be a great second item, even though they nerfed it to mean that it scales off HP more. Cho'gath is the HP king, so it's going to be good on him regardless. Now for your third item, similar reasoning for everything, but Jaksho, the protein value goes up, especially if you have heavy resistances already and you don't really need a certain one that badly. So for example, if you have Frozen Heart and they have a little bit of magic damage but not enough to give you trouble, Jaksho can be a great pickup as your third item, as you're still getting MR, but you're not spending 3k on a full MR item that you don't really need. And for Spirit Visage, this is best in games where you're doing the full drain tanky build, especially on top of champions that are going to be healing or shielding you. So if you have like an Ivern, Soraka, champs like that, Visage feels a little bit nicer. But typically I'd only go it as my 4th or my 5th item. And for Randuins, it's going to be into multiple crit champs, so if you verse Yone top, and they have a Kindred jungle, or a Tristana mid, Yasuo somewhere, then it can be a great armor item instead of Frozen Heart, because the crit damage is going to matter a lot more. And for your 4th and 5th item, this is where the Jaksho and Visage value goes up a lot, and also if you want a little bit of extra damage, then Riftmaker is going to be great as well, especially if you have Rod of Ages first, but even without it, even with full tank, you can still go Riftmaker as your final item, give yourself a bit of extra damage, because probably at that point as tank Cho you might have 7 or 8k HP, so definitely going to be in the fight for a very, very long time. Now that we've finally gone through the 3 main rune pages and item builds, it's important to know when you should be running each one. Then the 2 main variables for this is of course going to be matchup. That's going to be the main variable. The second one is going to be personal preference. There is a caveat to that. I would recommend, if your personal preference is tank Cho, to drop those shackles and get very comfortable on the movement speed or AP version, mainly the AP movement speed version of Cho. The reason for that is tank Cho is just a bad solo queue champion. Now that doesn't mean you're never going to go it. There are matchups where tank Cho is much better, and there are even games where tank Cho is going to be more impactful than the other 2 versions, but in general, on your average game as a solo queue player, regardless of your elo bracket, tank Cho is not going to be as valuable. You're going to be a lot more team reliant than the other 2 versions, so I do recommend getting very comfortable. on one of, if not both of the other builds. Now we'll start with the Halo Blades movement speed build. This is going to be your go-to. This is going to be your standard. It's a really good middle ground because if you think about the build, you're spending 2200 on the Shurelliers for your AP item, which also gives a bit of HP, and then you're building tank. Deadman's is a tank item, you build Canik Rukun or Force, Juksho, a lot of tank items. Yes, you can go Protobelt or Medjai second. Yes, you can go Zhonya, stuff like that, but typically you're going to be going Shurelliers into full tank movement speed, so you're still going to be very tanky, still that frontline threat, but your lane phase is going to be much better. Being able to build early AP and having Halo Blades makes so much of your matchups way easier than if you're Grass full tank. You can win so many more matchups, you can snowball way harder, and your mid-game options are way higher because you can make picks on mid because your movement speed is so high. You can choose from the jungle because you can get there early after pushing in the wave, and you can get there first and choose them as they come in. You have a lot more options on this build, you're a lot less team reliant, and of course the extra damage and having the options of Medjais and stuff like that means your carry potential is just in general very, very high. Now for the AP build, this is where personal preference comes into play. There are a lot of matchups where you can run both, the movement speed or the AP version. You can still go Halo Blades with full AP, don't get me wrong, it's very good. You don't have to go Comet AP or Halo Blades with movement speed, nothing like that. But if you do run Comet, I would actually stay away from the movement speed version. I would go Comet with AP if you're going to be doing that, just because it feels a lot nicer overall. But the times where you're going to be taking Halo Blades or Comet on the AP version is matchup dependent, and a lot of these matchups you can do both builds. So I would say the time where AP feels best is when there's not that much action top. So if you're up around a matchup or a player that's just sitting really far back, you don't really need that early spike of Shurelliers or that forcing capability, you can go full AP, because the full AP build is very, very good at farming. It's very easy to get that 10 tests per minute, power farm everything, eat jungle camp style on full AP, because you literally one-shot the waves, where with the movement speed show, your Q will one-shot the casters at some point, but you do have to walk up and do a little bit of extra work on the melee creeps, where with the AP version, eventually your Q and W is going to kill the entire wave, and then you can just go and eat jungle camp, so it's really easy to have that high farm style on AP Cho, but it does come at a price. You are going to be a little more vulnerable inside. You're not going to have as much pick potential in terms of forcing with your movement speed. If you choose from Bush, the pick potential will be higher, of course, because you have way more damage, but you're not going to have as many options as the Moon Speed Cho would have, but there are some matchups where it feels better. So there's matchups where you can do both, and there's matchups where it feels a little better. I'd say the matchups where full AP feels best is in games where you want to be building full AP, AP, but the matchup is not that interactive. And to give a couple of examples, matchups such as Mordekaiser or Volibear, the full AP version would feel a little bit better than movement speed. The movement speed build would still feel good, don't get me wrong, but because those champions are very immobile, but you can't really get up into their face, it feels good just to be able to poke them from far away, one-shot the wave, go power farm camps, and just be a high CS machine and just keep them shoved under tower, poking them whenever you can. Now, in terms of the tank show, so again, this should be your least used one. It heavily depends on your matchup. Matchup is the most important part of where tank show feels OP, because if you're in an easy matchup that you win, then you scale for free, and you also win the matchup. So Malphite, like we talked about before, Maokai, Gragas, tank show feels really good. But if you build AP into some matchups that feel good as tank show, so Gragas or Zac, if you build AP, they're going to out-sustain you, they're going to poke you down, you can't really walk up and eventually you're going to be stuck under tower, unable to play. So I would say tank show is going to feel better into matchups like that, especially MR building D-shield second win guys with a lot of sustain. Tank show is going to feel a lot better, but typically it's going to depend on the matchup, and we will cover matchups very shortly. The other factor of where tank show is OP, not really specifically tank show, but there are just going to be games you play where a tank is very overpowered. So if they have a low damage team comp, so an 80 carry Jhin or a Ziggs or Swain, something like that, something that doesn't really do much DPS, or mid is like Vex or Galio or an assassin like Zed. If you have full tank and they don't have DPS, or especially no percentage HP, you are just going to be able to tank them forever, especially if you build some drain tanky items like Fimbulwinter or Despair, stuff like that. You can just tank them forever. If you're having a good game, you win your matchup and they don't have a high DPS comp, you're going to feel completely broken, especially if your team comp has got good DPS as well, like a Jinx or an Azir. But don't worry about that. We don't trust our teammates here. Our tank show is mainly for carrying. If you're in a great matchup for getting a lead, trying to blow up the tower versus Malphite, something like that, or if their team comp just can't deal with a tank because they have too little DPS, because they all pick very greedy champions like Kiana, stuff like that, they're not going to be able to get through your front line. Moving on to the laning phase, and I'm going to be going through a bunch of different examples and also some key points at the end, but starting with this matchup up against an Aatrox. And the learning I want you to take away from this example is don't be afraid to make your lane volatile. Cho'gath with Hail of Blades is a very powerful level 1, especially if you know you're stronger, so in this example against Aatrox, I'm pretty sure I'm stronger, or if you don't know, you need to figure it out. Making a lane volatile is really important on Cho, because if you can win, you get the level advantages, but also you have a lot of sustain. So even if you take an even trade, your passive means you're going to be winning in the end. So you can see walk up level 1, instantly proc Hail Blades onto him, 3 procs, and click away. And now I'm just farming, waiting for my Hail Blades to come back off cooldown. It's only 10 seconds after the buff, doesn't take too long. And now it's back up, you can see it. I'm clicking towards him, make him click away and give that minion. If he went for the minion, I would have committed, but he gave it, so I went back to my farm. CSing is more important on Cho than other champions because you get HP and mana and the gold from it, not just some gold. So we can see it. The reason I didn't go for that full trade there is just because the wave was coming in. I don't want to trade inside the wave and make it too crazy. And now I'm going to be looking to use my level 2. So here when I hit 2, I was fishing for a Q in my mind, but the way he was moving, you can see he's not opening himself up to hit that minion and let me Q him. You want to be tagging a minion in your mind. If you auto attack this, I'm going to Q you. But the reason I didn't Q here, I knew he's going to get level 2 and I didn't want him to dodge it with his E. So I held on to it for a little bit and now I'm going to be looking to take a trade. So the reason I'm queuing now is I'm predicting him to use Q and E towards me, which he should do on this timer, but he's either smart, big brain, or he's just cowardly. Either way, he eat away there, and I didn't get hit by the Q, so it also kept me safe as well from tanking that ability, but I was predicting what he was going to do, and even if he didn't do it, that means I was safe in the end. So we can see I'm going to come back to lane here. I warded after my 2 wave, and now I'm going to be making it as volatile as possible. So I'm trying to hit him. You can see he took 39 damage through the wave. You can see I'm moving my character in a way. I failed it there, but you can see this next one, so that I'm between the minions between me and him, so that my E can hit him through the wave there. And level 3, even though I don't have my E, proccing Hail of Blades here. This is a little bit too crazy, taking the tower shot, don't try that at home. Another note as well, don't skill your W level 3 unless you're going for a kill, because the mana cost is way too high. Just go 2 points in Q. This was early on my Cho journey, so I was really just learning, pushing the limits of the champ and making it volatile. Again, I probably haven't played this matchup in 4 or 5 years since Cho'gath used to build Spooky Ghosts and Hextech GLP. But because it's a new matchup for me, and I've got Hail of Blades, a rune that I'm not familiar with at this point on my Cho journey, it's probably one of my first 5 or 6 games, I'm making it as aggressive as possible to really figure out the limitations of this matchup and get better at the trade patterns. So you can see here, he's screwed. He's really low HP. I'm picking for my jungler to come. My jungler decides golems is better than first blood, you know, classic jungle brain, but it's fine because I'm going to be able to take him out by myself. So we can see here how much mana and HP I'm getting back from the wave. Even though I took a tower shot and some of the trades weren't optimal, this champion has way too much sustain. Even without D-shield, you don't need it. You can just abuse your passive. So there he's in, and I flash in for the kill, and I'm able to pick up a solo. So the main reason I was able to have success in this lane was because I wasn't afraid to make it volatile. And to show another example of making it volatile, abusing your Hail of Blades, this game I'm playing up against a Mordekaiser. So Mord and Aatrox, really popular champions. I thought they'd make great examples. And we can see here, I'm going to be making this lane very aggressive. So here, I don't walk up to trade. If you're curious why, he just hit me with a Q. Really hard for me to dodge that. Right now, he has 1 stack of Mordekaiser passive. The game doesn't show it, right? Should probably add that in. But I want to fight him when he's 0 out of 3 stacks of Mord passive so that he can't run me down. So we can see here, he's 0 out of 3. I'm looking for the trade. And now, if you touch this minion, I'm going to trade onto. So here I go and bash him down once. Even though I didn't get 3 hits because he just spaced me there, you'll see what I do here. Use minion number 2, minion number 3 to get all 3 procs of my E. So even with the Hail of Blades, you just need to proc it once, and then the other 2 hits you can use on minions if they run away. Of course, if you can hit all 3 hits on your opponent, that's more optimal. Nice little sidestep there. But if you have to use the rest on the wave, that is perfectly okay. Another point to Cho laning is on a lot of champions, so champs like Jax, champs like Fiora. If you don't cleanly crash wave 2 or wave 3, you can be in a checkmated position, a really bad position in your lane. On Cho, that doesn't really matter as much. Of course, if you can do it, some games I will, some games I won't. If you can do it and it's natural, that's fine, but you don't have to overforce it like, oh, it's wave 2, I have to get this in, because you have so much wave clear. You have 3 AoE wave clear abilities, even though you won't skill W, 2 points in Q is enough, so you don't really need to feel too stressed about should I crash wave 2 or wave 3, as long as you ward after wave 2. You'll see, even though my wave's not crashing cleanly, I killed this wave, and went and warded and came back and didn't miss anything, because Cho'gath's very easily gankable champ, so you should always ward after crashing wave 2, sometimes even wave 1 in a volatile spot. So we can see here, I'm fishing for an E onto him. But he's clicking fire back, and now I'm going to be looking for a Q as well. You'll see very shortly. I'm kind of trying to read his body language here before I commit a Q, just trying to see his pattern. And now that I hit an E onto him, it's going to be coming up very shortly that I fish for a Q, just trying to really gauge his overall body language. So boom, I was really confident he's going to go for that caster. Now I've got a good read on him. I've downloaded his data, ready to start committing Qs onto him again. You're going to go for that minion, I know. And you can see, because I crashed wave 3 pretty cleanly, wave 4 bounces all the way back to center. That's a key point as well. I killed this wave very, very fast, you can see, because my wave is helping me and I have great AoE abilities. So wave 4 bounced back to the center, so drawing him out of the tower so that I can poke him even more. You can see here, I've got the 2 points in Q, way more confident on my Cho journey at this point in the game, and force a trade onto him there. Q, walk towards him, and try to proc Halo Blades with E, but he had a good E there. And you can see Q cooldown is so short. You can catch a lot of people off guard, especially if they've invested Chos recently, by continuously poking them. Nobody saw that cannon miss, and now I'm going to be playing for the dive. My jungler's bottom here, but it doesn't matter. You can see there, the reason I initiated W first is I wanted to go for a W into a Q, but I decided not to Q here in the end because the cannon minion is low. I thought it was very likely he's going to walk up and Q it, but he actually committed his E, so he doesn't stop to move as much as his Q, so I wasn't able to hit it there. So we can see now, I'm trying to fish for an E just outside of the tower range, being really greedy with that. But it's really crucial because if I can hit an E onto him and he's slowed from it, not only do I get Halo Blades activated, but he's slowed as well. Easier to hit my Q. So there, now I know it's go time. I really want to dive this guy, so I'm playing a little bit slow. I'm going to be approaching for the dive soon. One more Q, bait out his W. W is the main Mordekaiser spell you want to bait, and now it's time to go. So just beat him down here. I wouldn't say it's fully worth, but you know, the mental edge is always going to be a factor there, and able to pick up the solo kill. The best play would have been to push in this next wave coming out, and then go to dive him after that. However, this is perfectly fine, and I just wanted to showcase the example of abusing Hail of Blades and the pattern around wave control and warding. And for our next matchup, I'm playing up against a ranged top laner. This came up against a cannon. And you can see I've got a different setup. The Comet page, I do have Domination secondary. I would have actually preferred Approach Velocity, but I was just trying everything. And as long as I have Comet and Scorch, I'm going to be perfectly okay. But you can see straight away, my level 1 very, very different. Mainly using the bushes to not take as much damage. Here when he tried to take my bush, pushed him away. And looking to play mainly for farm and fishing for Qs on him as well. So you'll see, even though I take a bit of damage from auto-attacking, I don't have D shield or second wind, anything like that. Cho'gath passive is enough, and I'm able to Q him. The best time to Q is when he goes for a minion or when he tries to auto-attack you. That's when you want to be doing the best of your work. So there again, he just got a minion, so he was kind of still locked in that animation. A lot easier for me to hit that second Q. And you can see already, he's already on half HP from 2 Qs, from the Comet and the Scorch really kicking in, which is a big reason why I prefer Scorch over Water Walking or G-Storm, as you definitely feel it in your matchup. So here, I went E second, of course W way too much mana, E into Q. So this is really important, especially in ranged matchups. If you can max range snipe them off the wave with an E, like I did here, even though I didn't get the creep, I was fishing for the cannon, the E procs Comet as well, and it's very easy to hit your Q off of that sniped E, and now he's in a really bad position so early on into the lane, which is typically going to be the best part for him. Because once you have a couple of points in Q and you start to one-shot the casters and the damage gets way higher, that's when it feels a lot better for Cho. But the 1 to 4 is typically the most annoying part. But because I had really good Q accuracy, I got away with it. So here you can see every E I do, I'm fishing for him. He's keeping his distance a bit more now. Really good E by him there. And you can see my intention. Trying to fish for E whenever I can, I'll do so again. And even if your opponent respects you after they get caught off guard by it initially, that is giving you space to farm. You can see he didn't hit me for that minion because he's trying to respect my E. It actually hit him that time, so I got a 2 for 1, but it gives you space to farm if you know how to utilize your E properly. So you can see you went for the Q there as well. I know I'm going to take damage here, but I can't give up the cannon. I am a top laner after all, and then fishing for my Q off the silence, but he just sidestepped it very well. And now I know I'm in a mobile champ. The wave is pushing out. I need to go and get my ward down here and then try to get this wave in. So I would have warded deeper, but I was still a little bit scared of jungle catching me with my pants down in the river, especially Cannon was walking towards me. So my ward is a little bit ugly, but look, we see Musty, so it did the job well. We can see here, now I need to get this wave in really badly. I know Musty is on Crab, that's why I'm sitting back here on my hands. I definitely wouldn't be doing this if there wasn't jungle gap, but you do have to play around it, especially on Cho. A big skill for Cho players to keep in mind is that you're very, very gankable. And you're going to be ganked quite often because your champion is so immobile, they're going to be crying for help. So you do have to play quite respectful like I am doing in this case here. But now the next wave's in, I'm going to be trying to get this wave in and poke him down whenever I can. You can see I'm not too careless with my Qs. I'm not throwing off Q off cooldown, anything like that. I'm watching them very closely and trying to hit Q at the right time. Of course, we're not always going to get it right. Just make sure you're not being too careless with your Q. You can see still fishing for ease, went for a Q here. Good sidestep by him. The reason I W'd him there, even though it cost too much mana, I didn't want him to full combo me with his spells, so I did that as more of a disengaged silence. And now this is where I made my biggest mistake of the lane. I should just let these 3 caster minions die, let the wave come out to me, and then try to one-shot the wave under tower and base in TP. But I forced way too aggressive, got to the point where I'm low mana, low HP, and he tried to force onto me. Even here, I should just base, cut my losses. I was feeling really, really confident because I hit every Qs. I thought I was on top of the world, and he almost killed me here. I was able to outplay it and flash out here, and he didn't have a ward, so he couldn't kill me over the wall, but it was a close call. So just make sure the wave control aspect of it doesn't slip away. I was playing way too heavily just to fight him 24/7, when the wave could have just came back to me and gave me a better opportunity. But still fine, I'll base, I'll TP back, and we'll play our lane out like normal, and he's going to look to base, but my jungler just kills him, so all is good. He'll TP back, and now you can see I didn't even get an assist from that kill. I did get a bit of an XP lead, so not the smallest deal, but he was in a position where he was very easily diveable because I got him so low HP. But we can see here now, reset back to equal, and I tried out the symbiotic shoes because I couldn't afford the Swifty boots like we talked about before. So I'm just looking to run around. You can see I'm pretty rarely standing still. There was a mistake there. I saw that one step. But typically I'm just doing doughies around in circle, getting these symbiotic shoes stacked up, and then trying to fish him for Qs. But really hard against Kennen if he just E's your Q every time. Something you do need to keep in mind, a good Kennen player, this matchup will be a lot more brutal. But luckily this guy was making mistakes. He does have tier 2 boots at this point though, which makes it a lot harder. But you can see I can just wave clear from far away, utilize the bush as well, and just survive his poke. The minions are low, W in there. Even though W costs a lot of mana, if you get 2 or 3 minions, it's typically okay, because you get a lot of mana back from killing those farm. But we can see here, just playing really, really cautiously. He's walking down to grubs here. I'm trying to match him as well, and then looking to punish him later on. So I had a recall because Symbiotic Shoes has a big bonus there. You can see just basing so quickly. After clearing the wave, just one-shot the wave base and run straight back onto the map. And Musty was in a position where I could punish him, so I came here for the fight. So he dodged my Q. I should have held on to it a little bit longer, but I'm able to come collect my fee stack in peace. So I'm going to be going back to top now. You can see the matchup's going to be the exact same. Just Wing him, just Qing him whenever I can. And you can see this is going to be a big benefit to Cho laning, especially with the AP build, heaps of points and Qs. If you can cheese from bush and snipe a Q on them, you're going to be able to get a really big trade. So you can see here, I walked away. He saw me go into the second bush. I walked around here, trying to avoid his line of sight if he walked up, and then cheesed him from bush with this Q. And I was able to get a really good trade, which you'll see very shortly. So dodge out the Q, you can see here, dodge the Q so it doesn't arm in. See that low HP minion? If you touch it, I'm going to Q you. He walks up to farm it, hit my Q, silence before he can E that first minion to slow him from the E, and hit my second one. So you can see I'm always trying to use the minion thing. So his minion is low, he has to last hit it, go for my Q, and then before I reach him with this movement, after silencing him, he will be able to get away. So I slowed him off this minion to give myself one extra range to hit my second E, and able to get the third one as well. And now he's in quite a tricky position, hit that fadeaway Q as well. I know he has no E, so there's really nothing he can do at this point. So run straight at him. I really want a feast stack here, but unfortunately I don't have flash. So I'm going to be trying to snipe him with Q instead. And I'm pretty sure very shortly I was able to get that. Look at my mouse tracking him like a little rat, trying to hunt him down and snipe that kill. So I'm pretty sure on this next wave I was able to get it, but you can kind of see the point of this matchup. I utilized bush control a lot. I was trying to anticipate his movements, punish him when he tried to auto-attack me, or auto-attack a minion, and I was able to put him into a situation where I can just stroll up and eat him like a nice meal. And for our final example, I wanted to showcase a tank Cho'gath one just so you can see the differences. This game up against a Riven. I did make a little mistake there, allowing it to get my bone plating, but it did end up being fine because of my approach velocity abusing. So you can see here, I got my grass procced, I get my E, auto her, check out my movement speed down below, 352, click away, the movement speed's still there. You still get the approach velocity move speed as you're clicking back, so I'm able to kite her out. I watered that bush in case she walked in there. I wanted my minions to continue hitting her. So you can see, I don't want to force a trade with her on her side of the wave. My champ's not that strong as the tank Cho. I wanted to hit her and kind of bait her in and click backwards so she has to fight me in my wave, and because I have the approach movement speed, I can get deep in my wave like this very quickly. So able to get a great trade straight away. Also, because my champion has a lot of sustain and hers doesn't, these types of trades benefit me a lot. Now, you'll see very shortly, I'm going to be trying to utilize my E, not just to hit her, so hitting the minion and her with the spikes, but also to trim the wave a little bit. I don't want her to be level 2 when I'm like 3 minions off 2, anything like that. So trying to hit the whole wave and her at the same time, you can see. So a little bit of trimming and poking and also getting that sustain. So clicking away here, and then she used all of her abilities, so I click onto it, just get my Grasp proc off. So even though you're playing Cho, you might be used to Hail of Blades, hopefully, after this guide. But if you take Grasp, you have to have that change of mindset. Nice little short trades with Grasp are going to feel better for you. So you can see, going back here, I utilized the minion as well. I even pulled it up to the left, not just to stop it from crashing, but so that I was kind of perpendicular with it. So I can hit the minion, hit it with my E, and then here you can see I'm already buffering my Q through her CC. Really important that you buffer your Q through your opponent's gap closes. Whether that be a Yone Q3, a Riven Q3, anything, if you can buffer your Q, you can get a great trade. And there I had to click away because I was a little bit too weak and she ignited me, so my cookie wouldn't have come into play there. But now I'm in such a good position. She can't really touch the wave that freely. And if I can touch the wave on Tank Cho, so much extra sustain. So there, I assumed she'd gonna dash to the side, made a mistake there, and the extra point in W, I would say is just because I was planning an all-in. Normally, 2 points in Q, only 1 point in W if you're planning to all-in them. Because the mana is so high, you don't really want to be using more than 1 W in the early game. But here it's going to be fine, so buffer my E there, you can see EW so she can't dash away, and then try to kill her with Flash Auto Q, so really aggressive there, and Jungle Gap ruined our fun, but I just wanted to showcase the 1 to 3 in this really volatile matchup versus an Ignite Riven, to see what it looks like if you have a good understanding of playing around the differences with approach velocity and the grass page. Now we're going to be wrapping up the laning section with 5 extra tips, and I will be showcasing examples in the background. Starting with tip number 1, there are going to be matchups that you play where you have to reactively queue. You won't be able to just walk up and queue freely in certain matchups depending on the situation, and some examples of that, Silas is the best one. If you walk up and queue the wave and he's looking at you, he can just dash onto you and completely annihilate you in that trade. But if you hold your Q and walk up and he dashes onto you, you can buffer your Q for just before he hits E2 onto you, and he's going to get knocked into the air as he flies towards you. Then you can bash him down with your spells W and Hail of Blades E and win that trade. But if you queue the wave and then he does that, or if you queue him and he dodges it with E1, hits you with E2, that trade is going to be especially horrible. Another example is Yone. You need to pre-decide in your mind, I'm going to queue my ground. As he Q3s me, same with Jax, who Qs onto you, you need to be ready, anticipating their gap closer, and Q yourself just before they go onto you, and you can completely disengage and even win that trade. Now, tip number 2, if you know you're dead to a gank, it's going to happen to every Cho'gath player. If the jungler just rocks up, you know you're dead, take the wave with you. If there's no chance you can trade 1 for 1, just kill the wave. You have so much AoE spells, you get a feast stack on your way down as well. Just get that wave killed, not only for tempo, but maintaining good XP and gold as well. Tip number 3, it's going to be centered around Void Grubs, so a really good strategy on Cho in a game where your jungler is trolling and he's not near grubs on spawn, is you can push in the wave around 6 minutes, run down and eat a Void Grub by yourself, go back to top. Now this will give you a neutral objective stack of your ulti, to keep in mind, and also it will deny the feats of strength. So even if the enemy jungler is better and more skilled and more handsome, and he goes and takes the other 2 grubs, they're not going to get the feats of strength proc, so you can really hard carry that early game. You also get 1 void grub, which is better than nothing, and that neutral objective stack. And one thing about grubs as well is when they spawn all their little goblin things, they run at you, all the 1 HP things. If you just AoE them with a W, you'll get so much HP and mana back from that, so you actually gain HP from doing that grub. But just eat 1 and go away, do not stay longer than 1, and only do it if you have a feast stack as well. Now tip number 4, making sure you're playing for golems in a non-interactive lane. So if you can't get an advantage in your matchup or your weak side, just go eat golems on red side. You can do Gromp, technically I'd stay away from it, he's a big beefy boy, but golems are a camp that you can AoE down, you can eat the big golem really quickly, get that feast stack as well, and you can get really good golden XP, especially with the AP build. If you get 2 or 3 golem spawns because your jungler's committed to dragon stacking, something like that, you can get really far ahead. And for the final tip, it's going to be based around your Q as well. You are going to be in situations where your wave is in a bad spot, your opponent is standing between you and the wave, looking to jump onto your head with a Jax or something like that. You can't walk up and Q the wave there. It sucks, but if you walk up and Q the wave and they're pre-ready to punish you, you're going to lose that trade so hard. The only way you can do it is by trying to bait him to trade onto you and then queuing the floor like we talked about in tip number 1, or by doing something else, roaming, eating a camp. It'll suck, but there will be situations, especially in jungle gap games, where you can't walk up and queue the wave without getting heavily punished. So in that case, you do need to accept reality, try to disengage with your queue, bait the trade in, or go eat camps, base, or roam, something like that. It will suck, but it is something you will run into on this champion, so you need to be prepared for it. Moving on to abilities, tips and tricks, and comboing. And we'll start with Cho'gath's passive and also items. And one thing to keep in mind for Cho's passive is even if you're low mana, you can utilize the passive to hard push a wave. So imagining you just kill your opponent or he bases something like that and the wave's pushing towards them. If a wave is coming towards you, even if you have 20 or something mana like that, as long as you're a high enough level for your Q to be useful, level 5, level 7, you can utilize your E to start hitting the waves, kill a minion, get enough mana for Q, your Q will kill the minions, and so on and so forth. You will be able to clear waves even with very little mana on this champion because your wave clear is so good and your passive will help you even if you're Now, second one is Cho'gath's ulti indicator. So you are going to be taking Axiom Arcanist in a lot of your games. Really good rune on this champion. But the indicator has anti-synergy with the rune. So if they're low enough HP to die from your ulti, it'll show you. But if they're low enough HP to die from your ulti plus the Axiom Arcanist bonus damage, it won't let you know. So you have to roughly calculate in your head. So the indicator might not show that they're in lethal range, but they might only be 50, 100 HP extra. You can probably kill them with your ulti in that case, but it is something you need to think about ahead of time. Now, the most important part of runes, I would say for Cho'gath that you need to factor in, is Hail of Blades is bugged on this champion. It's incredibly annoying. If you do a normal auto attack, Hail of Blades will always proc, so always try to auto E if you can, and then it's really easy to get it. But if you just walk up and E somebody, I'd say there's a 50% chance that the Hail of Blades won't actually proc, which can be very frustrating, but we still take Hail of Blades, still an amazing rune on him. It's just something you have to keep in mind and play around. Always try to get that extra auto in if you can. Sometimes we can't always do it, but if you can, it's going to be really good for that Hail of Blades consistency. Now, in terms of Shadow Flame, it can crit neutral objectives with your ulti, utilizing that Shadow Flame passive. It can crit champions too, technically, if they're a big beefy boy, like a Mundo, something like that. But typically it's just for neutrals, but I wouldn't build it just for that. And as for a final item, Protobelt, we talked about it a bit before, but make sure you utilize this to dodge major abilities. So it can be good into a champion like Mbessa, if you're doing the AP build and just dodge your ulti with Protobelt in your mind, and really take away a lot of her power, especially ability like Silecy, if he tries to hit you with the chain, you can utilize that to dodge it, really hard for him to get on top of you if that's the case. Moving on to max order, so the order in which you're going to be maxing your abilities. So typically, we're going to be starting Q or E level 1, mainly E, and have the other one level 2, and then putting 2 points in Q level 3. Even on Tank Cho, you can do that. It does feel quite good. You can go 2 points in E if you feel confident in your matchup, but EQQ is typically going to be the first 3 points you use, and then W level 4. So at that point, you're going to be doing, assuming your Hail of Blades, AP, or Movement Speed Cho, 4 points in Q. You can go 3 points in Q technically with the AP build and still have enough damage to clear the caster minions, but even then sometimes if you get the Lost Chapter quite late, it will leave them all 1 HP. So typically I'd say 4 points in Q is going to be more consistent, but when you're very confident on Cho, you can default to 3 points and get 4 when you need it, because the points in W are very effective. So you are going to be maxing W, 5 points in W after your points in Q, because you get extra silence duration and the cooldown goes down, where with Q it's just damage. The cooldown doesn't change, the CC doesn't change. However, the wave clear is so good on that ability that you are going to be putting points in it regardless. Just keep in mind W is going to be your max and the most useful for a skirmish. So 3 or 4 points in Q into W max, into finishing off the Q max, E max last, but of course putting a point in ulti whenever you can. Now for Tank Cho, you can do 2 points in Q, maybe even 3 in really hard matchups and range lanes where if you're building tank, but you are going to max E first and then W first and maxing Q last if you're a full tank build. Moving on to your Q. Now, a good way to increase your accuracy on the spell is to make sure you chain CC your E first if you can. If you can hit 1 E on somebody through a wave into a Q, or Hail of Blades, 3 E auto attacks into a Q, it's going to give you a really high chance of hitting that ability. You can also Q into W, but make sure you're timing it out to max out the CC. Don't QW them straight away, even if they're on top of you. Q, they're going to float in the air, wait for them to come down, and W just before they land, just before the knockup expires, to really min-max your CC duration. You can also W into Q, especially if they're already CC'd from your teammate. So if somebody Vi-ultis or Vi-Q, something like that, and you W first and then Q, that can feel quite good to kind of mask that Q animation in a way. You also want to be using your Q to counter certain abilities. We talked about this in the laning section, but a Yone Q3, a Silasy, you want to be queuing your feet just before they hit you with that ability to disengage it completely. Making sure you're also predicting movement with your Q, such an important part about Cho'gath, that you're reading your opponent very closely and trying to predict where they're going to be going to before you use your Q. Don't just use your Q on them mindlessly. Another fact is using your Q from positions where they can't see you. So queuing from bushes is the obvious one, but queuing from fog of war, abusing terrain to hide around the edge of a wall can really increase your chance of hitting a Q, especially with the new top lane map. It can be quite easy to do so. You can also buffer your Q through CC as long as you start the animation just before you get hit by something, like a Yone ulti, something like that. You can buff your Q just before you get CC'd, and it's still going to go off for you while you're stunned. Now in teamfights, making sure you're always looking to chain CC it if you can. Your Q is very easy to dodge, but there's a lot of undodgeable CC in this game, like Rel combo and Nautilus and stuff like that. So if you can just chain your CC off of them, you'll make your job very, very easy. Moving on to your W. Now, we talked about this in the laning section, but the spell costs way too much mana, so don't use it carelessly, and don't even skill it until level 4, unless you're all in your opponent, or going to be towered over, something like that. Now, points in W are the most valuable for skirmishing. The silence will go up to a 2-second silence, so a 2-second AoE silence. Really, really OP, so try to get this maxed out as fast as you can, which is a big reason why maintaining great golden XP is really important. Points in your W are so valuable on this champ. You can also W into flash. Your W will go out from wherever you flash to, so that can be good to catch people off guard, especially if you're following up somebody's CC and they're about to be un-CC'd. The CC is going to time out. You can W flash into Q and keep them stuck there for a long time. And as for Cho'gath's E, relatively straightforward ability, it is an auto attack reset, so try to do that as much as you can, especially it guarantees your Halo Blade will actually proc, and Riot will not hold you back. Making sure we fish for our E's through the minions, just like in the laning phase section, it'll increase your chance of hitting Q, and give you a lot of extra damage in a lot of your matchups. You can also E then flash, it's pretty rare that you'll ever look to do this, but if you're just about to kill somebody with an auto attack and you need to flash away, you can pull that off. And the final tip for Cho'gath's E, probably one of the more important ones, your E actually gives you extra auto attack range. So if your opponent's about to walk up and hit a minion in front of you, utilizing the E's extra auto range can be very beneficial for you. Moving on to your ultimate. Now, because you can only eat minor minions or jungle camps 6 times, and then it won't give you a stack, if you are near an objective for your team, you have ulti up and there's no chance of a fight, make sure you strongly ping on your way, ping that your ulti is available, to let your jungler know not to smite steal that stack off of you. You are the objective stealing king with the spell, so if you ever have flash up or a blast cone and they're playing for Baron, your ulti will do more damage than their smite, so make sure you play for that, especially if you have got a lot of AP. If you can buffer a Q over the wall just before you flash and try to time your R and Q at the same time, really good for stealing objectives. You can also R champions just before your CCs, so buffer that animation, really crucial for just before you get hit by a Bard ulti, something like that, that you buffer your ulti before that happens. You can also eat the champion's neutrals, so like a Daisy or a Tibbers, something like that. You can eat them up, really important, especially up against Daisy, sorry. That guy can be a bit of a nightmare. You can R then flash, again similar to the E flash, pretty rare, but if you are ulting somebody and dodging a skill shot, can be really impactful. Now, a really cool tip about this spell that I haven't really seen talked about that often is holding the R skill point for extra HP. So you might have seen an Echo player hold ulti before he skills it so they can't see where their shadow is. You can do something similar with Cho'gath ulti, where when you level up from rank 1 ulti to rank 2 or rank 3, the amount of stacks you have, the extra HP gain per stack is increased. So let's say you get 500 HP from your stacks, and 2 points in R might get that 700 or 800, something like that. Just for an example, you can hold on to that point in R, wait for somebody to get baited into you, and then pop the ulti skill point to get extra HP, and kind of bait a low HP all in. It's pretty rare that it's going to be beneficial, but it can be quite impactful in a team fight, especially if your ulti is already down, just to hold on to that skill point and bait people in, and you actually have more HP in reserve than you need. Now, in terms of eating, so the efficiency around eating champions, neutrals, minions, stuff like that, it's really crucial. The #1 priority is to have your ulti if you need it for a situation. So a solo kill in lane, a grub fight, a team fight, having ulti is way more important than being efficient with your stacks. The game has evolved so much, there's way too much to do, where 5 years ago, if you played Cho'gath, you could just eat minions whenever and nothing's going to happen. You can't even leave your lane till 14 most of the time. But now, especially with the movement speed build or the AP build, you have a lot more options and there's so much to do, feats of strength, grubs, so you need your ulti up if something is going to happen. Only use your ulti for that situation or during downtime. So if you're weak-sided, there's no chance we can fight, or your lane opponent is like a neutralizer matchup, nothing you can do, then you can eat your minions very freely. Also, a great time to use your ulti is just before you recall. So if you're about to base and there's nothing to do, there's not like a big objective in 10 seconds, you can eat because the time it takes you to recall and come back onto the map, your ulti is coming back off cooldown, so that can feel quite efficient as well. Now, we talked about utilizing your ulti to eat grubs, one single grub to deny feats of strength, but something to keep in mind just in case both junglers are half asleep and they don't play for grubs, you can't come back and eat a second grub and get a stack. You only get one neutral objective Cho'gath ulti stack per grub. Now, I wouldn't avoid eating a second grub just because of that, but just keep in mind the second void grub that you eat won't count as a neutral stack. Making sure you're only eating creeps during the downtime is going to be the top priority for you. It's way better. Just remember that general rule. It's better to be less efficient with ulti stacks than to not have ulti for a major fight or skirmish, especially around an objective. Moving on to combos. Now, Cho'gath doesn't really have combos, I would say, but it's mainly the way you use your abilities. So the most common rotation of spells is going to be, if you're leading with auto attacks, auto E to guarantee Hail of Blades, the 3 E's into Q, auto them just before they hit the floor, you've got time to hit them with Q, auto W if you're in range, into R. So auto into E times 3 into Q auto WR is a standard combo if you're leading with an auto attack. Now, if it's realistic, so if you're leading with a Q or you E a minion and then hit Q off them, it'll be Q, you have to run towards them, W just before they hit the floor so they can't use abilities onto you after, and then utilize your E times 3 into ulti. You can use your ulti just before the silence expires, especially in a skirmish where they might flash away and your teammates can follow up, something like that. You don't always have to tunnel on the ulti stack, but typically these are what your spell rotations will look like. Moving on to the matchups. Now keep in mind this is a general tier list for all elo brackets. It's not only high elo, but there will be some differences depending on where your rank is. So for example, if you verse Aurora or Kennen against a Grandmaster or Challenger, good player on them, the matchup will be borderline unplayable, you'll not have a good time. But if you play those exact same matchups in Silver or Bronze, I'd even say it's Cho'gath favored because those champions require really good spacing and good utilization of their gap closes, which you can heavily punish them if they make that mistake. So I'll go through a couple matchups from each section, starting with the hard one. So a big reason why a lot of these matchups are so difficult is because they win the lane, they can completely run you down, especially the Bork builders, like Warwick, Yone, Aurelia, they can just build Bork, run you down, Darius can just pop Ghost and chase you down. A lot of them have potential to force you down, to run you down the lane and kill you in top lane, where these matchups wouldn't be too bad in mid, but because the lane is so long, they are very, very difficult. Now, some tips for them. If you're building tank, we'll start with Yone Aurelia, build some early armor, the Warden's Mail goes a long way here, and making sure you're counter trading with your Q. If Yone Q3s me, I'm going to Q my feet, W him, and then bash him down with Hail of Blades. He can't snap back to his E after he's silenced, so you're going to win that trade really heavily if he doesn't just Q3 and insta-snap back, but even if he does, he still gets hit by the Q damage, so the trade is not too bad. Now for Aurelia, same thing, if she Qs onto me, I'll Q my feet. If you build Swifty Boots as well, very easy to dodge your E if you're thinking about it, and then you're going to be able to survive at least until Bork, but by that point, you should start building as your second item into a Zhonya's if you're building AP, or just some extra armor if you're building tank. Now for Fiora, making sure you're Wing before you Q, you do not want to get your Q parried, so you can just parry slide onto it and stun you as well, which can be really, really brutal, but don't be afraid to take a level 1 trade against her with Hail of Blades. You can actually boot her down level 1, as long as the trade doesn't go too long, and because she doesn't have sustain in the early game, that's the best point of the matchup for you. So going on to the opponent favored section. Now, there are some matchups in here, such as Silas, where they can be really hard, but if you have the right game plan, it's not actually too difficult, because if you Q your feet every single time he E2s you and beat him down, you'll win the trade, and he doesn't really have sustain either, where you have quite a lot, so you can win the sustain battle against him. Whereas a champion like Zac can be really hard because you don't win the sustain war, that champ doesn't have mana, infinite HP sustain, so that one can be really tricky. I'd say mainly play in matchups like that for good farm, good tempo resets, and playing for camps, because you can't just heavy trade against him, it is going to benefit him a lot more. There are a lot of situations where you want to be counter trading with Q. So for example, if this Rengar jumps onto me, I'll Q, silence, and Hail Blades him and run away, stuff like that. And there are just some matchups like Zac or Cassante where you're mainly playing for good farm and playing for scaling into the later points of the game, because a lot of these matchups in the hard column as well, you actually counter them in a team fight. So imagining a Yone jumps jumps into your team and you hit him with a 2-second silence, he can't do anything. He can't snap back. He's just sitting there. Really easy to kill him. If someone else sees him, you can chain your Q off of it. You can just take a big bite, 1000 HP true damage off of these squishy carry champs heads like Irelia or Yone. So you counter them later on in the game. Just the lane and the side lane is very, very difficult. And the same applies for a lot of champions in opponent favored, where if Cassante goes in, and you silence him, I'd hold your Q for a more valuable target. He's very tanky, hard for him. Same with like the Silas, something like that, or an Aatrox. If they're just silenced in the middle of your team, it can be hard for them to do their job. Now, for the skill matchups, these ones are the most exciting, I would say, because you can hard win them. So a great example is Jax, where live 1 to 3 can be tricky. There are 2 approaches to it. You can Q your feet when he forces onto you with E and then click away, and then you have an 11-second timer when your Q's back up to force a trade onto him, or you can just tank his first E and bash him down with Halo Blades with E. That's also okay. But this matchup can be a little bit hard early, but because he has no sustain and you have a lot of sustain, as long as you extend the lane, poke him down, and making sure you Q your feet when he Qs onto you, or if you Q the wave or try to poke him, you're respecting his QE range, really, really important, you're going to be fine. A lot of the times, if you're using your Q on the wave or to poke, you have to hard respect so that Pantheon doesn't W you, Jax doesn't Q, Renekton. You need to play different when your Q is on cooldown. There are some really difficult ones here, I'd still call them skill matchups, where Pantheon Qing yourself just before he Ws you can be quite tricky, but think about it this way, if you pre-Q, predicting his W, and he doesn't jump on your head, you're already running away. He had to click backwards and wait for your Q, so he can't force onto you anyway, and because your Q cooldown is so short, you're not going to lose way too much for wasting a spell like that, and because you get a lot of mana from the wave, it's not too punishing to make that mistake. So if you're not confident to react to Pantheon W, you can just pre-Q your feet, predict when he's going to do it, and even if he doesn't jump, you're going to be perfectly okay. A lot of the matchups like Mordekaiser, if you force early 1 to 5, abuse your Halo Blades, abuse his immobility, like we saw in the laning section, can actually be quite good for you. Now, I'll talk a little bit about some of the range matchups here, like Cassiopeia. That one's a little bit easier because she's a mobile. It's a lot easier to hit your spells. This one is just dodgeable, where if you can dodge your Q and she can't dodge yours, you're going to win. So very, very skillful matchup. Highly recommend Swifties in that one. Same with Quinn, same for Vayne. Quinn is a weird one where you want to Q where she's going to land. So of course you don't Q your feet. If she E's you, you Q where the E is going to put her. And then she's going to get hit into the air. You can walk towards her, W into E, and demolish that trade because she doesn't have sustain either. So moving on to Cho'gath favored. Now, these matchups are going to be good for you. I'd say it's important to know when to go tank or when to go AP, and we talked about that in the section, but to give a couple of examples. Now for Kennen, really important to build movement speed or full AP. Poke him down with Comet and Scourge, as we saw in the laning section, and if you can go from when he goes for a minion or when he goes for a trade on you, really good, and if you W him in a team fight, you can block a lot of his value. Now for Teemo, this one can be quite tricky after he gets Swifty boots, but if you utilize Bush as well, and you can hit a couple Qs onto him, I would say it's in your favor, especially if you have so much wave clear, and his champ is just completely worthless if it doesn't get a lead in lane, where you're very useful as long as you're even, so you don't even have to punish him in lane or anything like that. You have options for it, especially if his dodging feat isn't that good, but you can mainly play for wave clear and scaling and be perfectly fine against a lot of these champions. And if you build tank into some like Sion, you can hit the tower in front of him. Not straight away, of course, but later on, after first or second recall, you can W him when he Qs, or even just Q because he's going to be standing still, so this matchup can be quite simple as well. Now, for the free matchups, these are the ones where there's not much they can do. You have way too much sustain for them to deal with you. So, for example, Gangplank, he's a mobile. So if you can just force onto him with your movement speed with Halo Blades, QW, he has no sustain. Really, really hard for him to play. You can keep him stuck under tower and just Q him permanently. This matchup can be quite brutal for him. The 1 to 3, you got to abuse your Halo Blades and play around the cooldown. And if he can get Sheen first recall, it can be a little bit tricky, but you should be able to make him recall before that point. Now for Gragas, making sure you go tank, I'd go second one. You can go conditioning if you're confident, but making sure you just keep him stuck under tower and play that war of resources. Make him burn his mana, make him burn his HP, and make it really tricky for him. Just be very mindful of getting ganked. A big part of these matchups like Malphite or Gragas, they have to call for ganks, but if they're spending a lot of resources to gank a tank Cho'gath top that's winning lane, probably going to be good for the rest of your team anyway. Just something important to keep in mind. Moving on to mid-game, and I do have a few examples prepared, but one thing I want to touch on is your overall general plan, just so you know what your default should be. Your default plan on Cho'gath should very rarely be to split push towers. Actually, Tank Cho'gath does a little bit better because of Demolish, but typically on the move speed or AP variant of Cho, and even a lot of time on Tank, your goal is to push out waves to maintain good XP and gold and create pressure. You don't need to shove it all the way to tier 2. If there's an option, just shove out wave and rotate and abuse your movement speed build to make a pick on mid. If the AD carry is ever walking up, especially in mobile champions like Caitlyn or Jinx, you should look to force onto them with your Shirelia's Deadman build and make it really hard for them to farm or play properly. Now, making picks is such a key identity part of this champion, so making sure you're looking to arrive to objectives early. Get to that Herald fight 20 seconds before it begins, or the Dragon fight, run in with your sweeper, hide on a bush. Because the big weakness of Cho'Gath's Q is it's relatively easier to dodge, but if you're hiding in a bush, they're walking in to get vision, you Q their support or jungle, whoever pops their face in, your Q 1.5 second knock up into a 2-second silence, they're just going to be CC'd forever, and you have a lot of damage to one-shot them as well, with the AP or movement speed variant of the build. Now, a huge benefit to the movement speed version is you can go between side wave and mid very, very quickly. So you can push a wave, insta-kill it with QW, maybe an E sometimes, boost straight mid. If it's a good play, you can fully commit, and sometimes they see you bottom, they think the coast is clear, but you appear mid so quickly, you can force onto them very easily. If there's no play, you boost it straight back bottom, and you don't really miss any gold or farm at all. So making sure you're constantly looking to make picks on mid, arrive to objectives early, create fights, because you don't want to be flanking that often, unless it's numbers advantage, pick type of situation. You don't really want to be flanking, you want to be grouped up with your team, so don't arrive to the objective late, you're not the hero, just get there early, and make sure you provide that control for your team, and punish the opponents when they try to walk into your vision. So for our first example here, I just wanted to speed through a couple of sequences, just so you can see the overarching general plan, and I picked this example because my team is very, very far behind, so it was going to be a tricky one. So you can see here, I swept my way in, tried to get a pick as I walked in, didn't quite work out too well. I think the Leona did end up dying in the end, because there's no reason for me to go to side at this point. Constantly looking for those picks on mid, like we talked about, so able to get one, and then boosting straight back to side after this fight. I was hovering around here because they had a bunch of shutdowns, so it's some high value kills, get the 2-man silent. Now I'm going to be boosting it away and basing straight back onto the map. So got my dead man's plate now. You can see I don't need to go bottom, I don't need to go top, there's no urgent wave there. And they were showcasing themselves mid, so I was running straight down mid looking to abuse my movement speed and punish them. But because they didn't play too aggressive, I just ended up going back to bottom. So you can be very flexible with your deploy, but what I mean by that is you don't have to run straight down bot lane or top lane unless it's urgent. You can kind of float around mid very well on this champion without losing too much time, as your movement speed is so high. So you're able to punish the Nasus as well, able to get the kill, and then push out this wave yet again. So here I'm going for the tower. So why am I going for the tower when it's not the general plan? There's nothing I can do. Tryndamere is dead, that my bot lane's in base, there's no alternative play to make. I can't flank mid right now, my bot lane has stance at top. So this is one of those timings where you can play for tower, but I didn't get in the end because I don't have Demolish, not Tank Cho, very, very slow, so it's not going to be your go-to. So you can see, yeah, I want to play for Arakan. I'm here first, I want to punish them as they walk in, and make it really, really difficult for them. So just clearing the wave, you can see wave clear is pretty good, not as good on this build as a full AP build. This wave would have been dead years ago if I'd full AP, but still relatively okay. So killed the wave, boosting it down mid, and this guy missed his ulti because I'm too fast, too furious. You can see a really much higher survivability on this build compared to Tank or even the AP version. Tank, more survivability, maybe late game. I wouldn't even say that, but at this point, especially with Deadmans and Shirelias, your survivability is quite high. So we can see I'm here first, trying to punish people when they walk in, and we're able to get the Arakan. I'm waiting for my feast stack, of course, able to pick that up. But the reason I held my ulti, I think Kane actually stole it, if I remember correctly. But it's fine regardless. Yep, he smited at them, but I can just use it on this Nasus anyway. So W into Q, just so he can't flash away if he had it, and we're able to get the kill here. Waiting till like an ulti for the stack. You can see I didn't wait for him to be red, my ulti threshold, because I have Axiom Arcanist. I predicted that damage as well. So killed the wave, base, building into Kainagruken, straight back onto the map. You can see, not much side laning going on by me. I'm still farming the side, but I'm not really tunneling too hard on it. Arrived at this objective early, cancelled the MF ulti of my silence, flash over, and now looking just to hold this area here. So a big part about Cho'Gath team fighting, we'll talk about it shortly, is making sure you have a really good survey of the fight and getting a lot of value from your spells. So you can see here, I'm just running around, Q the Leona, 2-man silence here. I'm just kiting in and out, trying to get a lot of value from my Qs and Ws, constantly that thorn in their side of knocking them up and silencing them, and then having to disengage because my teammates all died here. But luckily we had the Arakan buff. So here you can see the power of the Swifty boots, just spacing this guy away and able to eventually kill him. So I'll watch one more sequence, just you can see the general game plan. I TP here. I flanked the Diana here, so a lot of fighting, a lot of skirmishing, but my farm isn't really that low in this point because I've still been farming the waves whenever I can, but constantly looking for plays around objectives or flanks on mid. You can see I went for the MF, but that's a very fast champion with Ghostblade, Swifties, and no passive, so that was quite a tricky one. You'll see very shortly, push in mid, look for a play, there's no option, so boost straight from mid to top. You can see constantly looking for picks on side or on mid is a huge part about this champion's mid-game identity, and we're able to get the Azir kill as well. I think he stole my feast stack again, not a fan of that Kane, but you can see the overarching general game plan is push inside, gank mid, or even push in mid and gank side, constantly looking for these proactive roams around the map with your enhanced movement speed. And to showcase some specific examples of this, you can see here, I'm running straight down mid, hiding around this corner, trying to tease the AD carry if he walks up for the wave. Especially he's playing Israel, he feels quite confident, but he has not ran into the movement speed Cho yet. You'll see very shortly how easy it is to make a pick on mid. So pop Shirelias, hold on to Q, wait for him to dash away, Q into silence just as he hits the floor, and able to pick up the kill there. So you can see I'm constantly looking for picks on mid, especially up against AD carry players. You're able to run them down even if they have a little bit of mobility like Israel. Don't be too afraid to look for those angles. And I'll also showcase an example of cheesing from bushes. So you can see here, I'm going to be looking to push out the bot wave, one-shotter with my Q, and run straight into the jungle and try to predict where the support's going to come. So here, Dragon is spawning very shortly, so I'm assuming the support's going to run in here and try to get vision control around the next objective. So I come in here first, I'm waiting patiently for him to arrive. You see I don't Q him now, waiting for him to check me. W into Q, W, E, Q. You can see silence so he can't W away. E, so he's slowed for my Q, and I'm able to hit it, and then he flashes over, but you'll see here as well, it doesn't matter, we get the Shirelias Nikes on, second Q into a feast, so really easy if you can anticipate where the support's going to come in through, that you can cheese them ahead of time. And to wrap up this mid game, I want to go through an example of that full AP farm heavy style that we're talking about, where with Shirelias, you want to be looking for a lot of picks. With the Luden's AP build, don't get me wrong, you still want to do that. You still want to make picks, especially around neutral objectives, trying to cheese people when they walk in. But you have a lot less reach without the full movement speed build to kill people on mid. So you want to be maximizing your CS a lot more on this build. And also, it scales better with items as you want to be getting death cap later on and some big AP items. So you do want to have great farm if you go for this build. So you can see I went for the Ludens. My matchup was Karma, pretty non-interactive. So the AP build is best here. Push in the wave, hit the tower a little bit, but I'm mainly playing for fun. So one shot this wave, pretty sure I TP mid here to kill the Evelyn because I saw an opportunity. And we can see how our combo here, lead with W, the Q was a mistake, but lead with W so she can't ult away, flashy ulti, and now straight back to side for farm. So hitting the mid tower is a waste of time, I should go straight back to top, but you can see here just min-maxing my farm. I'm going to go for golems after this, pretty sure, after the tower, so tower into wave, and normally I'd base here, but I'm really close to my item, so I agreed for golems as well. So you can see you can clear them really quickly, especially if you're willing to ulti the big golem. If I were to guess why I didn't ulti this big one, I felt like a fight might happen around Rift Herald. You can see everyone circling around. So remember prioritizing having your ulti for a skirmish over min-maxing your ulti stack. So I'm still close to my item. One more wave as well. You can see my farm getting close to that 10 CS per minute. So unlucky on the cannon, we never saw that. Base, pick up my Storm Surge, my favorite second item for this AP build if you don't need Zhonya's. And now looking to come back onto the map and make a play. If there's no play, I'm going to be playing mainly for farm. So you can see here, they were attacking my team mid. I'm going to make the play, kill the Braum, and then I'm going to be leaving after a bit of dilly-dallying here, kill the Jinx as well, and straight back to bot for the wave. So I'm a lot faster on this build in terms of going back to side and looking for farm. You can see Q the wave, come to golems as well. A very, very greedy playstyle, but it takes a lot longer to do golems on movement speed or tank Cho compared to full AP, so I can come back and only miss the 1 minion there. The Yone tried to cheese me up. This is the example we talked about before, buffering your Q just before I got hit by Q3 into Q into one shot. You can see the real power of the Storm Surge build there. So base, straight back onto the map. You see Medjai's after my second item of 10 stacks. Big fan of that build. Mal took my wave, so I'm going to take a jungle camp in response. The attacks there, you know how it be, and then straight back into top. I'd ping sorry here, but I'm not really sorry. Don't tell that guy. Straight back into top. Push the wave and TP here. So you can see 10 CS per minute. I'm still looking for players. I'm still attacking mid when they're playing too aggressive and looking to be proactive. Bad Q there. But typically I'm playing to maintain good farm and take high chance fights, where with the movement speed version of this build, I'm constantly looking to kill wave, look for fight mid, kill wave, look for fight, for a pick, sorry, inside, or get to an objective early. On this a build. It's a harder balance, but you want to try balance farming really, really well and still being at the major fights and punishing the opponent's mistakes. Next up, we're going to be covering team fighting, but before we break down some specific examples from my recent games, it's important that you truly understand the main points behind team fighting on Cho'gath so you know what to look out for in your games. Now, step number 1, make sure you arrive to the team fight early. It's quite important on a lot of champions to be at the fight before it begins, but it's even more important on Cho'gath. The two main reasons for that, vision control is broken on this champ, as your spells are really impactful but easy to dodge, so if you have vision, it's really good, really easy. If you don't have vision, it's really difficult. But the second point is your spells are really impactful with a low cooldown. You have two massive AoE, high CC abilities with a low cooldown. They're very spammable. So if you get there early, you can get multiple rotations of your spells off. But if you TP into a fight late and the fight's already begun, you might only be able to get 1 or 2. Now, step number 2, this could be the most important, but also the most difficult to see. You need to develop your spatial awareness and observe the whole battlefield. Cho'gath is an artillery champion. You're not going to dive on the backline or anything like that. You are the artillery for your team. It's important to see the whole battlefield and not tunnel on a specific individual. So I've got some examples of this coming up, but just because a champion dives in, let's imagine an Alistair, you don't have to use abilities on him. Because if he hard CCs, let's imagine he 2-man combos your mid and your AD carry. If you Q his backline that are approaching with your artillery, with your Q, and stop them from following up, he's going to be completely useless. You can use your W at times, especially if a bruiser or an assassin goes in, really impactful, but don't use your Q on the first guy that dives in unless it's a squishy champ like a Camille, something like that. Typically, you're holding your abilities, observing the whole battlefield, and trying to catch people out of position that are trying to follow them up, or stop them from being able to follow up in the first place from cheesing from a bush. So even if your backline gets comboed, don't panic. You need to hold your abilities. You need to see who the most important factors are in that fight. It could not always be the damage. It might be the Rakan. If you can stop him from comboing with your silence or your Q, or you can stop their backline from doing damage to follow up his ulti, you can be extremely impactful. So being really aware of the entire battlefield is extremely important on this type of champion. Where on a champ like Darius, you just need to kill one guy with your ulti and then run everyone over. And on Olaf, you're mainly looking at the backline, just for some examples. On Cho'gath, you need to see the entire battlefield. Now, the next main point, your W is an extremely broken ability, but you need to be prepared. Mark champions in your mind that will be very impactful to use your W on. So an example would be if a Yone jumps in, it was a really good point because he can't eat back, you can W him, or an Irelia, she jumps in and she can't really use her W, anything like that. Mark the champions in your mind that you want to be silencing and make it really hard for them to do their job, and don't use your W on a champion that doesn't have anything worth silencing. So Alistair or Rel, they full combo your team, they're done, their job's done. Don't W them. A Malphite, good example as well. No need to waste your W on them. Hold your W for a more valuable target, as it's a very, very powerful ability. And for the final point, if you're wondering about how to play out a team fight on tank, it's actually pretty similar. You're still artillery, you still have the same abilities, they do less damage, same amount of CC, but the only difference to tank is you're more of a frontline. So you'll be standing in front of your team instead of with the backline. If you're full AP, you're kind of chilling with the Hui, with the Corki, they're your boys back there. But if you're full tank, you're up there with the Vi, with the Xin Zhao getting stuck in, but you're still observing the whole fight. You're still not using your Q on a target that doesn't need to, or your W. You still need to have that artillery mindset. Just the position of where you're standing is different depending on how tanky or how much survivability you have in that game. Now, to showcase some examples of what we were talking about, you can see in this game, Dragon is spawning very shortly, so I arrived to the objective first. My teammates are stalling, so I take some farm, but now here early. So with my sweeper, I was trying to get into that bush. Rakan just spotted me in time. You can see I'm just hiding in bushes, waiting for people to come in, trying to utilize my Q from Fog of War. So sweep my way in here. You can see, trying to be really creative and find a good hiding spot so that I can cheese them without them expecting it. This is a good bush, by the way, the one I just left, but they do expect it a lot of the time, which is why I was trying to find a more creative position. So we can see here, just use my movement speed, trying to force here, but bot lane's really far away. So you are still tanky with this build. Don't be too afraid to make some space and get stuck in, but you definitely don't want to be risking getting caught up because you can get multiple rotations of your high impact CC. You don't want to be dying early. So you can see here, waiting for the Skarner to push the guy into the wall before I Q chain CCing off the Rakan. I'm not tunnel visioned on killing this Rakan because now this Diana is jumping on my team. Big OE, better for me to focus him. So kill her there with the silence and the feast. And now looking to Q the backline. I'm not queuing this Malphite. You can see I'm not even looking at him. He's ulted in. He's done his job. He's finished. I want to stop his backline from following up his CC. So I'm able to hit the Corki. I try to get to, but you can see the intention there. Back into the bush, waiting patiently, W the Corki. You can see multiple rotations of CC, making it really hard for their backline to approach it all. And now I'm able to hit the allow, take him out. And here I was trying to block the Corki Qs for my boy, but wasn't needed. Chain CCing the Q off the Alistair combo. So you can see a lot of the concepts that we talked about showcased in this one. But the most important is definitely going to be that spatial awareness. You need to see the entire map. You need to see the entire team fight, which is a very hard skill to develop. A lot of people have the mindset of, I want to kill this guy, but you need to see everything. You can see here, I'm not tunneling on that Rakana kill. This Diana is more impactful for the overall fight. I'm not tunneling on the Mal fight. The Corki is more impactful. He was really strong at this point, so I was making it pretty much impossible for Corki to do his job in this fight, and Rakan as well. And then in the end, when they did overforce trying to kill my team, I was able to come in and collect my feast stacks. And to showcase one more example, you can see here basing and TPing into the dragon. You want to be at the fight before it begins. Don't wait for the fight to happen and get there late. That's a bad habit on a lot of champs, but even more of a problem on Cho'gath. You need to be here early utilizing your artillery. So you can see TPN hiding in a creative position, trying to cheese from this bush or around the wall. You can see waiting patiently. I want them to walk past this kind of area here, and then I can get behind them and wrap around, get some creative Q angles, or walk towards me. But my teammate hit a CC, so I chain my Q off of it. 2-man Q, 2-man W. You can see clicking back here, and then playing slow. I'm not queuing right now. I'm waiting for Galio to land, and queuing him just as he lands so that I can hit as many people as possible. Feasting on him, you can see walking into the bush as well. Really high awareness of bushes, quite important on this champ, so it's hard for them to use their spells, and able to pick up a lot of extra kills as well. So Lux did a great job here, but you can see the habits we talked about. Get to their fight early, hold your spells until either they gap close in, like the Galio ulti, or chain CCing off your teammates, and chaining your silence off your Q means you're going to be CC'd for a really long time, unable to participate in the fight. Next up, we're going to be covering drafting, so you have the best idea possible of what to look out for in Champ Select to know if it'll be a great Cho'gath game or not. So starting with your own team, what is Cho'gath good with on your team? Now keep in mind the enemy team is a lot more important for this, but in terms of your team, what you want from jungle is going to be attack damage champions ideally, but champs with crowd control and will go in. So a champion like Vi, Wukong, Pantheon that'll go in, get stuff started, tank abilities, and very importantly CC them, so you can follow up their CC with your Q. Think of how strong a champion like Pantheon is, where he jumps in, stuns somebody, and then after the stun they're knocked up, after that they're silenced. He can get a lot of value from his champion, and he goes in first because Cho'gath's not really engaged. It can be quite hard to start the fight, unless you're cheesing from a bush, so having somebody that goes in for you and starts it up can be really good for you. Now for mid, it's either going to be mages that can follow up your Q or set it up for you. So a champion like a Hui or a Lux, where we saw in that example before, Lux Q into Cho Q, or Hui Fair into your Q, or vice versa. Really good follow-up in that case. Or you can have AD divers, same reason as before from jungle, like a Yone or an Ambessa that flies on in, CCs people, and allows for you to hit your spells, and really gets the fight started. Now from AD carry, anything's really fine, but good follow-up from far away can be great, like a champion like Jinx, or if you had a combo, she can just WR, something like that, or an Israel. Just champs that can follow up what you're trying to do can be best. It's kind of awkward to play with a Samira or something like that, but it doesn't really matter from AD carry point of view. Now from support, hard CC. Please, if you have Cho'gath on your team, we have an Alistair, we have a Rel, we have a Leona. The meatballs that'll go in, and especially AoE CC like a Rel or an Alistair, extremely impactful. Now in terms of what you're bad with, from jungle it's going to be AP assassins like Echo or Evelynn. Not really reliable CC, and you're both AP champions, so it feels really awkward, and they're weak early game. You're not that strong early game, so it just feels really horrible from a team comp point of view. Now from mid, champions that are weak early game as well, like a Smolder or a Kassadin, you're the scaler for your team. You don't want scaling that doesn't do anything like those champions on your team, but they're really uncommon. Most of the time, you don't really care what you have in mid. Now from AD carry, again, doesn't matter, mainly AP champions like a Swain or a Ziggs. You don't really want that if you want to be optimizing. And from support, it's champions with low CC or no crowd control at all. So champs like a Milio or a Karma, champs like Yumi, something like that, really don't want to have that on your team. Now, in terms of what you're good against, so the top matchup is the most important part about this. What you're good against, from top, you want to be versing ideally no sustain and mobile chaps. So your champ has a lot of sustain and you have a lot of skill shots. So that's of course going to be good for you. So champs like Malphite, champs like Gangplank can feel really good for you, really easy to hit your abilities and out sustain them in the long run. Now from jungle, champs that get ruined by silence feels really good. Champs like Lee Sin or Echo, when they fly him, they get silenced, their combo's completely ruined. Of course, low threat is nice, but the reason I don't want to bring that up, so a champion like Graves that doesn't really threaten you, every top laner loves versing those useless champions, but Cho'gath loves versing champions where if they go in and tank a W, a 2-second silence to the face, they have very little value. Now from mid, low mobility, so champs like Talia, champs like Xerath, you don't have to run into them, and you can be constantly looking to snipe them with a skill shot with your Q, and then they're probably going to die off that. So those champs feel quite good to verse, especially you're a high movement speed champion with that build. So if you verse skill shot based champs like those two we just mentioned, it can be really easy to not even take damage from them. Now, in terms of AD carry, similar as well, low mobility like a Jinx or a Virus, even a champ like Caitlyn, feels very easy to hit with your abilities, and it's really hard for them to play the fight if they're respecting it. And from support, anything really, champs like Rakan, champs like Karma, it doesn't really matter. Karma, you can hit with Qs quite easily, and she doesn't do anything, so that's nice. Champs like Rakan, you can ruin with a well-timed W, so it feels a little bit better. Even though champs like Alistair and stuff like that you wouldn't care about, your W doesn't do as much to them. He combos in, he's got nothing left. You don't feel as useful against him compared to Rakan, who flies in, gets silenced, and can't play the game anymore. Now, finishing up with what are you bad against, this is the most important from top lane. So high threat and sustained damage. So Darius, Warwick, and Bessa, it's really easy for them to run you down. And they can outscale you in side lane as well. So it can be really hard to play up against those types of champs, even though in a team fight, you might be good into some of them. Now from jungle, high threat. So champs like Rengar, champs like Skarner, they can force onto, especially in the early game, can be quite tricky. Rengar is not really a big one, but it can be tricky. If he's fed and you're trying to push inside and he just rocks up with ulti, it can be quite hard to play that push side and look for a pick style, as he can easily force onto you. Now from mid, dive, or high movement speed. So a champ like Yone can be annoying, especially as a bulk builder, or a champ like Victor who's just boosting around the fight, really hard to hit with abilities against those champions. Now from AD carry, it's mainly going to be either mobility or percentage HP shredding. So like a Vayne or a Kog'Maw can kill you pretty quickly. I'd rather verse a Kog than a Vayne, as you can just space them out, but those are the champions that typically do better into your champ. And for support, nothing really stands out, to be honest. Some examples would be champs like Lulu or Blitzcrank. Again, you don't care that much, but Lulu makes his AD carry faster, a lot of shielding and, buffing him up. It can be a lot harder for you to burst him, and a champ like Blitz just getting into a fight early and hooking you into their team can be really, really annoying, but your movement speed's so high, you shouldn't be getting hit by Blitz hook anyway, but a really good Blitz player can be a little bit annoying, same with Lulu, which is why I put them on the list, but again, the main issues for what you're looking for is going to be from top. Nothing else really matters in terms of what you're scared of versing, mid a little bit, but mainly top. Moving on to Cho'Gath's identity and the mindset you should have when playing this champion. And we did just break it down in the team fighting section, but it's such a key point of his identity. You are the artillery for your team. Do not tunnel too hard on a specific kill. You need to see the entire team fight. You can't lose sight of the entire enemy comp. You can't focus in on one target or anything like that. You need to see everything and use your spells on the most impactful targets. It might be using your W or sometimes your Q on the people that go in, or it might be holding your Q to stop the follow-up. Either way, you need to see everything and try to use your spells the best way you see fit. Now, point number 2, your champion is extremely good at making picks, especially with the movement speed build. You need to be constantly looking for proactive players, one-shot the wave, sprint mid, sprint top, look for a pick inside, mid, get to an objective early, cheese from a bush, whatever it may be, you need to be constantly looking for proactive picks on this champion, especially with the Shiralia's Dead Man's Plate build. And for our next point, you scale extremely well. Your champion is really good at late game as Tank Cho and as full AP Cho. The movement speed one is still good, not as good as those two. The strength of that one is you have a lot more options, so you can snowball and get kills, get picks a lot easier than the other two builds, but it doesn't scale quite as well. But use that as confidence. You don't need to make it too volatile early game to the point where you're dying a lot. If you can get to level 7, I would say, 5 to 7, even or ahead, you're going to be fine in a lot of matchups. You can have your tier 2 boots in some scenarios, and your Q one-shot the caster minions. So 1 Q on the casters, wait for the melees to fight each other a bit, wait for them to get low, 1 Q on them, you'll clear the wave, and you'll be in a situation where even if your matchup's difficult, you should be fine. Swifty boots, even if you're up against a Darius or an Olaf and you're level 7, you should be fine a lot of the time. Being consistent is a lot more important on this champion than tunneling too hard on kills. That doesn't mean I want you to play passive. You need to learn how to abuse your Halo Blades and play aggressive in lane and get leads, especially if their champion is weak early game, but it just means your default should be a consistent state where you're got good farm, good XP, and getting to your items unscathed. And for our final point, making sure you avoid tunneling too hard on side laning. Don't try to beat up your opponent 1v1 inside, even if you can, if you don't have full vision. Of course, sometimes we see the jungler top. We just kill the guy bottom because we can, it's fine. But don't tunnel on that. Just because you can win side 1v1, you should use that prio just to push in the wave and attack the rest of his team. Because even if you win 1v1, you're very vulnerable. You're very easy to gank and kill inside from the jungle or support roam. So it's important that you mainly play for the wave and looking for plays around the map. Not tunneling too hard, beating up the Jackson, breaking his tier 2, anything like that. You take way too long to take towers, and you can't really force on somebody that's under tower farming as well as other champions can. So you're mainly looking just to push in waves and attack the rest of their team. Next up, we're going to be going through a full game review where I talk you through exactly what I was thinking throughout this entire game. So in this game here, I'm playing up against a Nah, so I'm trying to get a cheeky Q level 1, start off the lane on the right foot and proc my Comet. So we'll see, I'm waiting for the wave to come in, but smart by him, expecting it going really far away. So I'm still, you can see, utilizing Control Q to really maximize the range of my Q and see if I can punish him. But he respects, good by him. So I'm mainly going to be playing for the farm instead. So auto that one is a bit desynced, and I'm still watching him. You can see his movement was quite good there, quite erratic movement, hard to Q, and if I miss my Q, straight back into the bush. Don't let him punish me when my spell is down. So normally level 1 with Counter Cho'gath versus a range matchup, you're kind of just fishing for Qs and trying to get as much farm as you can. You don't want to take a bad trade, but don't be afraid to tank an auto or two for some farm, as your passive will just top you back up, and once the wave crashes under tower, you are going to get a lot of that HP back. So you can see here, already healed back to full. Didn't really take a bad trade because he used the bush, but just as an example. So blocking the wave, he's going to ward, and I think he went and killed my Viego. So I'm just looking to push this wave in and make him lose more. I know he's running there, so I'm just hard shoving. You can see here, trying to deny while he runs circles around the jungle, and trying to get myself in a good lane state. So here I fog down. You don't really want to be helping your jungler when your wave's in a bad spot, but now my wave's great, so I can look to cheese him. And you can see using the terrain to Q from Fog of War, get that extra Q, 2 points in Q with Comet and Scorch, definitely a lot of damage there. And again, I try to get into this bush, do the same thing. So you can see it's a constant game plan for me, utilizing Fog of War to punish, and then I'm able to hit the Q and chase him down with my E. So there's a tough spot for him. He should have E'd the Q, but even at this point he should E away, but he's holding his E for my next Q, so I was able to proc my E onto him, and now I'm in a good position. He's a ranged champion, he doesn't have that good sustain, he has D blade, not shield, and you can see I was able to hit my second Q as well, so now I'm in a really, really good spot. So trying to hit the wave with my E and hit him at the same time with the spikes, and just looking to slow push this wave, hard push the next one, and punish him when I can. You can see there my E proc my Scorch, so in a good position. I tried to W before he W'd me there, but he started the animation, and I'm not afraid, I can beat him down. I've got my cookie here, pop my Q down, he flashes away, so I had to click away here. If I flash ordered him, he would have lived just barely 1 HP, I'm pretty sure, which is why I didn't go for it, but now I'm going to be hunting for Qs now. That's why I'm not queuing the wave. I want to queue him under tower and stop his recall, so you can see here, but I knew he was going to stop his movement, so I'm waiting. I'm trying to get in a position where my Q is really high chance to hit, and I went for it there. So it didn't end up hitting. The reason I went for it is you see that 1 HP minion outside the tower. That's what I was trying to Q him as he went for, but I actually queued a little bit too late. I should have pre-queued, so I wasn't able to hit it on that timer. But it's fine, because you can see here, we talked about it a little bit, where you might be low mana, but if you can clear the wave without getting punished, you'll get a lot of that mana back. So we can see I'll do that really shortly. I'm going to be utilizing my E here to get some mana back and try to fish for him at the same time. So I'll go for this last minion and then wait for level 5 as well. Get a bit of extra mana from that. 3 points in Q. Can definitely look for the kill. So you can see there I queued. I used 50 mana for the casters, but because I got all 3, I got most of that mana back. And now looking to punish when he goes for it. But he's got pretty erratic movement. He's doing pretty good here to avoid my Q. He's not just moving in a really predictable way. So I tried to lead with movement. You can see flash E there. And my plan initially, so to give myself an excuse, I tried to flash E him and then Q, hoping I'd get enough mana back, but I was only on 46, you can see, just not quite enough. So it was a bit of a troll flash in the end, but eventually I got enough mana for it, so it did end up working. So what I should have done back here to make the kill more consistent was got one more minion, get 80 mana, and then do this exact same play here, where flash E into Q is guaranteed if I have mana here. So I had the right idea, just poor execution in terms of my mana, but able to kill him in the end, and now off to a really good start. And you already know what I'm buying. It's going to have a Dark Seal in there, so always prioritize Dark Seal over a single Amp Tome unless you're Tank Cho'gath. So you TP back here with the Swifty Boots and the Dark Seal, and going to be looking to make it volatile straight away. So the reason I W'd there was because I wanted to WQ so that he couldn't dodge with his E, but he ran straight at me even though he's level 5 because I think he had support ganking, which is what I didn't expect, so my Q didn't end up hitting. So a lot of anticipating, it's not always going to go well for you, but more often than not, it'll just be better than Mindsleeve throwing it out, and now I have to respect the Pike roams. So just chilling, let the wave come back in. This is comfortable for Cho, as you can clear the wave very easily. I warded over the wall in case he went for a tower dive, something like that. A 3-man dive or just Pike coming, so I just had to give myself all the information needed to see what's going to happen. So there I queued the wave and just W'd him there for a bit of poke. And you can see he had the right idea. As soon as I walked up and queued the wave, he forced onto me. So good idea by him there. And now I'm just looking to clear the wave out and play it more consistent to not get ganked by Pike. I'm mainly playing for farm now because their support is gapping. My support is joining me now, so I can look to play more aggressive, especially when this mega form drops off. So just waiting patiently. I don't want to queue a single minion. I want to queue him. So able to play a little bit for trades, but mainly playing for farm here. I'm not giving him range to jump onto me, and now I know he's going to drop into small form, so able to get the kill there. So here, I know he's going to drop into small form before the CC expires, so I walk up, I W so he can't E away, and then E ulti, the ulti buffer just before his jump, able to pick up the kill. And as well with Axiom Arcanist, you can see he's not glowing red, he's not in feast range, but Axiom Arcanist comes in clutch here, and I'm able to just barely get the kill. So it's really important that you calculate the Axiom Arcanist in your head roughly. You don't have to be precise or anything like that. Just keep in mind if their bar is a little bit higher than what the threshold is, you can just munch on them with Axiom. But jungle support comes and punishes me, and the mid as well. The whole squad turned up, so I did end up dying and losing my precious Dark Seal stacks. So coming back here, you might be wondering why did I buy Glowing Moat over a refillable potion? And that's just because on Cho'gath, if I was versus a really hard matchup, I would go refill. But on Cho'gath, you have so much sustain, I don't feel like wasting the 150 is needed in so many different matchups. So I just went for as much as I could buy. Glowing Moat was the best thing I could buy, unfortunately. And it feels a lot better for me than refill in games where I don't even need that potion. So you can see here he's playing really aggressive, being quite annoying. And here I had to make a choice, give the cannon and dodge his Q, dodge his W, sorry. It feels quite bad, but look how much bot vision we have. And I didn't really see their teammates, like the Pike or anything like that. So I just played a little bit safer here than I normally would like to. If I saw Pike bottom and Pantheon mid, I would have gone more aggressive there. But surviving ganks is a crucial skill for this champion as well. So now you can see I'm trying to Q off the cannon, really nice there, Q into W, into E. So the E, some would say it's not worth it, but I'm happy with it because my champion has so much extra sustain than him, so it's not going to be a big deal. So now you know what I'm doing. I'm hunting for Qs, trying to Q him at the same time. I don't care about wasting W here because I want him as low as possible, so I can just walk up and do this. So now in a really, really good position, and I'd say the main reason for that has been the way I've been using my Qs, and sometimes when I see an angle, forcing E first onto him, where a lot of people will move in kind of circles or back and forwards, trying to bait your Q. So if you just force onto them and hit them with E, it makes it very easy for you to hit your Q in the first place. So you can see building towards Shirelias, I went for the movement speed build in this game. So the reason for that is up against Nah, I felt like the movement speed build feels a lot better than full AP, as it allows me to reach him. The Shirelia's proc, Deadman's, hit him with E, which allows me to hit with Q. So I feel like for this matchup, I prefer the movement speed style opposed to the full AP. So he's forcing really heavily, his support's here, so I toss out my Q to stop him. You can see spatial awareness. I'm not Qing the Nah. I don't want to get hooked into Pike stun when I don't have my flash. So I Q now. He has to release his Q early or it's going to get cancelled, and then I can just walk out this Nah. You have to be really aware and making sure you use your major abilities on the biggest threats, even in a top lane skirmish like this. So unlucky from the Nah there, tried his best, but the Swifty boots and the little Ava Wisping really coming in clutch. You can see they're trying to push the wave in and dive me, but I'm making it hard, flash into kill. W, I went for this guy too. You can see just really powerful on this champion. The movement speed is such a big difference. I would have died here so many different times, I'd say. Maybe not so many, but a couple of different times. If I didn't have this movement speed, it allows me to play more aggressive than I otherwise would be on this champion. So now heading straight back to lane, you can see at this point my team isn't really having the best game. The kill score is 8-8, but I have 4 solo kills, so definitely a bit of underperformance. So my main focus here is to stay alive and maintain good farm. I'm still going to poke like this, either minion into the Q, of course, a great habit, but they have a roaming support, strong ganking jungler. It's more important for me to live than to kill this guy, kill this Nah here, but I see support in jungle bottom, so I'm going to be playing aggressive. So here I'm pushing in top. I was initially planning to help with grubs, but because the enemy team fully committed bot side, I wanted to min-max it and punish this now while my jungler did grubs instead. You can see at this point the W 3 points with Scorching Comet does so much damage, and looking to Q him right here, you can see making it really hard for me with his erratic movement, but he does have to give CS up every time he does that. So you can see EW there, getting him really low, fishing for a Q as well, but with the phage movement speed it does make it a little bit more difficult. If you are playing Counter Cho'gath, make sure no matter what, you get Swifty boots on your first recall. Don't be like this guy here, but he probably couldn't afford them. So push in top, roaming down now to help with the grub fight, and trying to chain my CC. Well, I'm too far away here, so trying to chain it off the Pantheon jump. He jumps in, easy to hit my Q. You can see I'm waiting for my silence, not straight away, until his E expires, so he can't use another spell. And here, he's a little bit off being able to eat him, so I waited for my next Q and able to pick up the kill. So here the Yone did some unfortunate mistakes, so I just fully disengaged it and TP'd out. This wasn't the best fight to take, I'd say, because my jungle mid was so far behind, but I was pretty confident I could have been the difference maker. I'd say I was a little bit too late, because the Now was so low HP, I got baited in. I should have been there a little bit earlier, just like we talked about, being at the fight before it fully begins. I was there first, but if I was there 3-4 seconds faster, I could have chained my Q off the Viego W. The fight outcome could have been a little bit better. But anyway, got my Shirelias back onto the map. The reason I went Blue Trinket, I go it pretty much every game as soon as I'm level 9. It feels really good to be able to get deep vision without leaving your lane, but I will swap to Sweeper later on in certain games. So here I tried to W initially to bait to stop him from Eing. I should have expected him to E first though and just led with E, so a bit of a mistake on my part there, and then he juked off to the side, so pretty good erratic movement by him. Unfortunately I didn't have ulti, so I couldn't just eat him there, but I'm going to be playing for this fight now, so pushing the wave, fog down, pushing a Q off the Pantheon stun, really nice, into a silence so she can't jump away, and getting my feast. So chain CCing, such a huge part of Cho'gath, as if you can chain your Q off someone else's CC into a W, they can't move forever. And now you know we're going to be super greedy. I'll skip a little bit far ahead. You know I'm just going to proxy waves and hit the tower. Why am I not basing here? So the reason for that, I don't have a major item. It'd be Moon Plate, whatever that thing's called, and Chain Vest, and I'm high HP, high mana with great sustain. Better for me to be greedy here. But if I was a Jax, for example, half HP, half mana, I'd have to be thinking about my recall a lot more. So pushing this wave base, you can see building towards that Dead Man's Plate, swap to Sweeper now. My lane phase is done. I want to be looking for proactive picks in the mid game, which is why I swapped to Sweeper here. Grab a pink if you can, but if you're a Darkseal King, there's not going to be room for a pink very often, so Sweeper will have to do. You can see run straight mid, floating around, hoping the Aurora makes a mistake so I can make a pick on her, and coming up is probably my biggest mistake of the game, where I turned it a bit too hard, because she was the main carry, she just killed that Yone. I thought I could get her here, because I was able to hit a lot of my abilities, but the Pantheon came, so I had to disengage it. I should have flashed it, this was my main mistake. I shouldn't have gone for the kill in the first place, but I was trying to force for my lead. But especially when I've got Darkseal, I shouldn't have overforced. The result is fine, but I would say it's not worth it for me personally. As a solo queue player, it's better for me to look for this type of situation where it benefits me a lot more, because now I lost my Darkseal stacks and gave a shutdown over. But despite that, we're still going to be, our game plan's still going to be the same, looking for proactive plays. So here, dragon spawning in a bit. I'm going to be looking to eat golems on the way back to top, mainly playing to farm my second item. I don't really want to fight a dragon right now with my teammates underperforming, so I'm okay to use my ulti on that timer and just play mainly for farm. So you can see the Q just one-shotting casters feels extremely nice, and juking this guy around the place, making it hard for him, and just playing to get my second item. The second I've got Deadman's, I'm going to recall, pick that up as fast as you can. Doesn't matter what item you've got, once you've got it, you try to pick it up as fast as you can, and you can see me ulting golems at that timer isn't a problem. My plan was to farm my item and not fight dragon. Now that I've got my item, my ulti is syncing up nicely with me coming onto the map, so ready to make another play. So push in top first, maintain good XP and gold, and then look for a play. So here, went for a flank because I felt like we had the numbers advantage. I felt a bit confident here, and silenced the Pantheon first, silenced the Q. I'm pretty sure he got creep blocked by his crab there. It actually pushed him out of the way to safety. It's not just junglers loving crabs, I guess crabs love junglers as well. So we can see I'm waiting patiently for them to come in, trying to control this vision. A huge part about playing Cho, vision control, and then buffer off the chain CC, off the Alistair combo. But it wasn't an angle, no one really there to follow us up. And there I'm clicking away. I clicked a bit too far back, but I didn't want to get flash done by Pantheon, anything like that. So I'm playing this fight relatively slow. You see, making it really hard for Jinx to space, because she has to respect my Q, but the Viego just went way too far forward there. So you can see, making it really hard for Jinx to follow up. Really aware of all the champions in the fight, and trying to use my Q on the most impactful target. The fight didn't end up being too good. You can see cheesing bush again, trying to constantly looking for picks. If you're walking near a bush, I'm going to try to take it over and cheese you as you walk in. So here as well, we're playing for these picks. You see when they're all glowing red, you know we got to go in. And I'd say I was a bit too quick with my spells there. I should have led with movement a bit more, but ended up killing the Gnar in the end anyway. Pretty sure Aurora comes and cleans us up here with the pike actually, but I would say it was worth in the end. We're far behind, so trading kills like that, definitely good for us. So now Artican is spawning soon. I do have TP, but Yone is bottom. I'd go bottom if that wasn't the case. So I want to get here early, control the area, push in the waves, and look for a pick. So my Alistair was looking to be a bit creative there, trying to get a pick on the Gnar. So initially I walked down to follow him up, but the Pantheon showed as well. Our mid's dead, our jungle's far away. So I was very hesitant to follow up this play here. You'll see, I'm trying to help as much as I can without risking dying, and because I have enough movement speed, I still have Shirelias, there's no chance of me dying there. So he made a mistake, but I wasn't ready to follow that up because my teammates weren't in the area. So now pushing the wave, rocking down here, and you'll see I'm trying to make it hard for Gnar to go in, so silence him here, and I tried to predict his jump over the wall, but luckily hit the Aurora anyway, so I was kind of marking the most impactful targets. I don't want the Gnar to fly in and stun people here, but I thought if I queued him right now, he would eat to dodge it, so I tried to predict it, and I was able to hit the Aurora as well. So taking a bit of damage here, kiting out, you can see the high movement speed build really coming to clutch. Silence the Gnar again. I saw the Aurora jump in, which is why I fully spaced out, and then looking to flash Eater as she was the most impactful target. Here I do die in the end, but again, trading gold in this type of game state where we're far behind is not the end of the world. You can see that jungle, mid, and bot are all outperforming, so I got to take what I can get. Here, I wasn't interested in fighting straight away. I'm watching with TP. I'm ready to go in if it looks good, and here the Yone flies in, so I decided to follow him up because there were some low HP targets, and we have good bush control. So TP in, you can see Q straight away, able to eat this Aurora again, trying to keep up my stacks and get this kill. So I was watching that. It's never going to be I'm TPing no matter what or I'm not coming. I'm always watching and deciding if this looks good, I'll pull the trigger. And if you're curious, the variables that made me pull the trigger here. So I'll go to when I exactly use it. The Gnar is out of position. He's overextended. They're coming into our jungle with Alistair Hui on the way. And I'm a 4k HP champ. They can't really just one-shot me. So I felt really confident in this fight due to those variables. They're coming into our control. It's not my team overextended into. The enemy is coming into our control overextended. So I felt like it could be a good fight. So it ended up being good. Push the wave, eat the tower, just being a bit greedy here. And then I'm going to be basing, picking up my MR item and straight onto the map. So I went for the Koenig Rukun. They have solo AP Aurora. I felt like I wasn't going to get my Force of Nature stacks. So it's better for me to go this item here. And she was so fed I needed a MR item. So straight back to Artican. Really want to play for this here and play for picks at the same time. So you can see I'm kind of circling the area, looking to get control, and here they're coming in. But my jungler is dead, so we do have to play it a little bit more patient than I'd like to. They're eating camps here. Why did I feast that camp? My jungler is dead for 8. I felt like there was a low chance of an Artican fight happening that I would want until my ulti comes back up, and the cooldown is quite short at this point. So we can see I had to answer. I was thinking about trying to gank the Gnar with my movement speed, but he did disengage here, so still constantly looking for picks. Aurora's not going to hit my tier 2, so I'm trying to be really proactive. I pushed in top wave, I tried to gank Gnar, trying to flank mid here. You can see arriving to bushes early, trying to cheese people that walk in. My sweeper use could have been better. I should have had sweeper for that bush. That's a really common bush to ward, but in the end it didn't end up mattering. So you can see Gnar got chased down by Yone a bit, so able to collect a kill here. Actually, that guy took it and straight back to top. So here, my support played way too aggressive. So again, I'm ready to follow up, but I'm not fully committing. So here when he goes for this combo, I was trying to chain CC it, but I got stunned by Pyke, and I'm looking to follow up his CC. You can see that I was waiting for Pyke to ult him before I queued. You can see I'm not using this straight away. I'm trying to hit the Pyke so he can't follow and reset off of him, and got a 2-man queue there. So it's not just anticipating your own team CC, anticipate the enemy team's gap closes as well. Here I tried to keep Hui alive. I'm pretty sure I silenced the Pantheon for him, but I missed, so no one saw that. But I'm able to peel him a little bit with my Q here. So even though I'm getting killed here, my movement speed's so high, I can fully disengage. Q onto the backline. Why would I Q this Pantheon? Why would I Q the Pyke? These champs have done all they can. They've got nothing left. Better for me to Q the Jinx and Aurora that are on the way and stop them from following up what their front line is doing. So they overcommitted. Yone finally got his first good play of the entire game, and we're able to clean up some kills. So you can see I'm kind of weaving in now the fight, getting multiple rotations of spells, and making it hard for their backline to follow up their front line. I was trying to silence the front line there. We did make the mistake, but you saw the intention behind it. So after that fight, we're able to pick up the Baron. So now we're in a really good position to close out this game. We get the Artican as well, so not too bad. You can see I base instantly because I had a lot of gold. I didn't want to take that fight. So even if my teammate dies here, I'm pretty sure he did. Not the end of the world. You can see it's pretty rare. I'm getting sucked into my teammates making bad mistakes. A lot of them are just dying mindlessly, but it's pretty rare that I've died with them. A lot of my deaths are my own mistake, my own being proactive and looking for picks too hard, but I'm not really following up these bad plays. Really important mindset to have on Cho, as you do want to maintain good XP. You can see I'm level 17 at this point, highest in the game, due to not following up all these mindless plays. So we get another pick here. Because I arrived at Dragon early, you can see I got here early. I'm waiting in this bush, waiting for them to walk in, trying to punish them. Here, I didn't quite get the chain CC I would have liked. I should have started pre-moving a little bit earlier, but you can see the intention behind it. So able to kill this Pantheon and just hold this position here, trying to kill them when they walk in. I've got an eye on the Alistair, as he's got the main CC for me, so I'm trying to follow him up if I can, but I'm not going to be going too crazy with him. So I had a good Q there, but no follow-up, and you can see I'm weaving in another fight, abusing my movement speed, constantly fishing for Qs and trying to make them come into the objective. So this next fight here, I was trying to just get our team to go for Dragon. Our Hui got engaged on. I think he was able to live though, it didn't really matter. And we're able to get another good fight. So at this point, I think I've bought enough time. We got Baron, all that. My mid and my Yone, Hui and Yone have scaled up into the game. So now we're in a really good position to close out. So this was where my teammates threw a little bit. I ate the dragon because I felt like there wouldn't be a fight. That's my reasoning. They have got a dead Jinx. Why would they fight without their 5 kill 80 carry? However, my Yone and Viego had different stories. They forced a fight here. And to be honest, if I were to do it again, of course, in hindsight, you could just go there. If I were to do this again, I'll do the same thing. I would backpick more. I'd let them know, don't fight this, don't fight this. But going bottom here is the correct play, as it's very unlikely the enemy team fights you on this timer. And if my team's overforcing, that is their mistake. So it's fine, even though a couple people died, out of my control at that case. I could have pinged to help them out though. So push in bot, get the bot tier 2, try and eat golems as well. You can see really greedy style. Not quite that 10 cents per minute that you'd aim for on a full AP Cho, especially because I've died a few times, but still really far ahead. So getting Jaksho as my final item. If you're wondering if you should sell Medjais, I'm not a fan of doing that. I prefer to keep it unless you drop below 10 stacks. But now heading onto the map, we're trying to close out this game. So my goal here, you can see 5v5 force. I want to force a fight here and catch them out, as I know we win 5v5. And I know if I go side, someone's going to get caught out. So I want to be ready for this fight. And you can see it works out in my favor. So silence the Pike, just eat him straight away before he ease away. I buffered my ulti through his dash and able to play that nice front to back and chain CC, or hit my CC on their backline. You can see how fast I am at this point, really easy to stick onto them, and we're able to end the game off this push. So even though my team was behind, I tried to get a little bit of credit off the way, he was trying to take it all. So even though my team was behind, I stick to my game plan. I was pushing in waves, I was roaming, I was constantly looking for proactive plays, I wasn't getting sucked into the bad plays. Pretty much every play I made, I decided if it was good or not, which is really important for Cho'gath, as you have a lot of options to force plays, but if you're following up your feeding Alistair or Viego's plays, you're not going to have as good of a time. Be really proactive and decisive and make your own plays in the game. Moving on to how to counter Cho'gath. How do you get a big lead up against this champion? It can be good to know if you have a verse 1, or if you're playing him, you know what to look out for if your opponent is trying to punish you. So for step number 1, I wouldn't normally say this for a section because every champion hates bad matchups, but Cho'gath is very matchup dependent compared to the rest of the rosters. There's some really hard matchups for this champion compared to hard matchups for a Camille or a Jax player. They're a lot more playable, but the hard matchups for Cho'gath in top lane can be extremely brutal, so make sure you figure out his hard ones to know when to not pick him, or what you can be picking into him if you have some mastery on those champs. Now, in terms of his Q is going to be a big part of this section because it's a major ability that can win or lose in the matchup, making sure you're trying to bait him to use his Q. So a good Cho'gath will use his Q on a single minion, not trying to hit the entire wave, but if you can stand in a position where you're near the low HP minion, but also on the entire wave, bait out his Q, especially if you dodge it, that'd be great. You can make him ruin the wave and make it push back towards you, because when the wave is near your side and he walks up to Q, you have the long lane to run him down, his Q is on cooldown, and if he doesn't use it, he's going to be bleeding out XP. So bait him to use his Q to ruin the wave is a huge way to gain an advantage into this champion. Making sure as well, regardless of how the trades are going, you have erratic movement. You can't move in a predictable way. You need to pretend to go for a minion, click back, pretend to run for him, click back, bait him to use his Q, move in a different pattern, really hard for him to predict, because if you just walk up, get your minions like you normally would if you verse like a Fiora or something, walk up and trade on him whenever you want, it's going to be very easy for him to hit his Q, so you need to have very erratic movement, bait him to use his Q, and then punish him during that 6 seconds when it's on cooldown. Making sure also you react to the visual of Cho'gath. This is very important. Cho'gath will do a little stomp, and then the Q will show on the floor. You see the animation before you see the visuals of his Q, so you react to Cho'gath doing a little stomp on the floor, and you're already pre-dodging his Q before you see the circle on the floor. If you try to purely react to that, it's going to be too late. Making sure as well you avoid standing parallel to him and the minion so he can't hit free E's onto you. It may seem like a little bit of damage, but it adds up and it allows him to hit his Q a lot easier, so don't let him farm a minion with E and hit you at the exact same time. Making sure as well you tag his Q in your mind with an ability that can outplay it. So an easy example would be Fiora. If you Q me, I'm going to W, but an example that's more realistic, let's say you're playing Jax. If he Qs me here when I go for this minion, I'm going to Q him, or I'm going to Q the minion off to the side if he's not in range, but you're anticipating his Q when you walk up, and you have your mind marked with your ability that you're going to use to dodge it with. If he Qs me here, I'm going to Q a minion as Irelia, I'm going to Na'i, even if you don't have a gap closer, I'm going to Maud W if he Qs me. You need to be anticipating and have an ability ready, especially in a situation where it can be quite hard for you to dodge it if you don't want to give up that minion. And for our final point, making sure when your wave's in a good state, you're standing in a position ready to punish him. So if you get your wave on your side, you're not standing just farming normally, you're standing between him and the wave, so that if he walks up, he has to Q the wave, you can hard punish him, but you need to be there in advance. If you're just farming, you see him walk up, you're like, oh, I want to punish this guy and walk at him, it's already going to be too late. He's already going to have Q'd the wave and ran away. But if you're standing there guarding the wave, if you go anywhere near it, if you go into XP range or try to Q it, I'm going to force onto you, it can be really, really difficult for him to get any of that farm or XP. Now, we're going to be wrapping up this guide with the 5 main takeaways I want you to keep fresh in your mind before you queue up for that next Cho'gath game. So for number 1, making sure you're building that skill set of predicting your opponent's movements. You want to be watching them closely, anticipating what they're going to do. If I start my Q animation, my little stomp on the floor, are they going to juke backwards to the left? Are they going to go for this minion? Try to plan ahead of time, even in team fights as well. Will this guy juke backwards? Will he just Lucian dash to the side? Should I even use it in that case? Try to predict what your opponent is going to do to not only increase your accuracy on your Q, but build a lot of experience at anticipating. You're going to be building reps at that skill set, which is going to give you better accuracy overall, but also better at reading what your opponent's going to do, which will apply to any champion you play. Now for our next point in terms of your ulti, making sure you prioritize having your ulti when you need it. You never want to be in this situation where there's a big grub fight coming up, your jungler starts it, everyone's circling around, and you don't have your ulti because you ate a custom minion 20 seconds before. When you saw my jungler is running straight to top side, grubs are up in 10, there's probably going to be a fight there, I should hold on to my ulti for that fight. Making sure you're really mindful, it's better to be safe than sorry. It's better to be in a situation where it's like, damn it, I didn't use my ulti a minute ago when I could have, I'm a little bit less inefficient, than be in the situation where you don't have your ulti for a major fight. Making sure as well with your lane, for point number 3, you are pre-planning your queuing. You need to be deciding if you're queuing aggressively or using it to counter trade. So especially important against champions that can force onto you, like a Jax or a Yone. You need to have that in your mind decided. If I use my Q on this guy right now, can he just punish me? So if the wave is on your side, it won't matter as much. You can chill under your tower, Q them. If it misses, click back to tower range. But if the wave is in the center and they're posturing at you, they're walking towards you, or the wave is near their side, you need to be really mindful and pre-plan out your Qs a little bit better. Making sure as well you break the idea of Cho'gath being a full tank champion. There are multiple different builds that are good that we've gone through, so making sure that if you are running the build, you have that mindset. It can be really easy to get lost in the sauce of just playing a champion that you like and defaulting to old habits. You need to remind yourself, I've got this build, I've got the movement speed build, I'm constantly looking for picks, I'm being really proactive. I've got the AP build, I'm more of an artillery control mage, I want to be chilling with my backline. You need to pre-decide what you're going to do in these upcoming fights depending on your build, or the playstyle, or even the game state, and not just default to the same thing every game. And for our final point, making sure you arrive to fights early, sorry. You avoid arriving to fights late. You need to be at any fight before it begins, whether that be Dragon, Artican, anything like that. You need good vision control on this champion to get the most out of it. Really easy to hit your spells if they're walking into you, and you've got Fog of War advantage, and if the opposite happens, really hard to get value from your champ. Your champ's also very vulnerable, really easy to pick off because you don't have any mobility spells. So if you walk into fog and get killed, you have to be really mindful of that situation as well. So you might have to give the objective if you don't have control. You must always try to get to that fight before it begins to get the most value from your champion. Alright everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video. I put a ton of time and effort to make this guide as good as possible, so any support is greatly appreciated. And as usual, if you have any questions at all regarding Cho'gath or a future champion guide you'd like to see me cover, let me know in the comments below. I'll see what I can do, and I'll see you all next time.